Everything you need to know about creating a digital strategy and roadmap for your digital transformation. That's the topic we're going to cover here in episode 225 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. We help clients define their digital strategies. We help them select software. We help them plan for their implementations. We help them execute implementation through program management, change management, process improvement, and architecture and data. So, excited for today's episode. We're going to dive into digital strategy. We're going to play you some of the best clips over the last year of anything we've done related to digital strategy on this podcast, as well as on my YouTube channel. So we're going to play you, we're going to share with you a couple of different interviews that we've done here recently. One is going to be starting off, we're going to talk about how to start your digital transformation journey. And that's going to be a conversation that I have with Greg Benton, who's the Chief Strategy Officer here at Third Stage Consulting. So if you missed that episode where we talked with Greg at the start of 2025, we had our New Year's episode where we talked about how to get started on your journey in digital strategy and digital transformation in 2025. And then later in the show, after Greg, we'll have Jan Baan on the show, who will be on to talk about composable ERP and sort of the movement towards composable ERP and the movement away from the more monolithic single big ERP system. And we'll talk about what composable ERP is and why that's a movement and a trend you should be aware of and at least know what your options are as it relates to composable ERP. So that's a great conversation. If you missed that, that's a conversation we had with Jan Baan just a few months ago. And then later in the show, I'm going to share with you a video where I compare SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft. So if you're in this market for ERP systems, or you're trying to figure out what ERP system might be best for you, and you're considering one of the big guys or the big names, we'll chat about SAP S/4HANA, how it compares to Oracle Fusion Cloud, as well as how those two compare to Microsoft Dynamics 365. So be sure to stick around for that. And then we'll also talk about AI-enabled enterprise technology systems. What are the top AI-enabled ERP systems out there? So if you're looking at ERP, not just in the context of traditional ERP capabilities, but also looking at which ones best use AI and best leverage AI, we're going to talk about that later in the show. And then finally, we'll end the show with an overview of the 4 major digital strategies you have to choose from. And this is going to share with you the pros and cons of the 4 major paths you can go down as you pursue or define your digital strategy and roadmap. And we're going to share with you the pros and cons of each, as well as how to figure out which general direction makes the most sense for you so that you can hone in and narrow down your search on whatever technology or technologies best fit that particular model. So lots of good stuff we're going to cover here today. And the goal here is for you to walk away from this podcast episode feeling a little more confident in your ability to define a digital strategy and roadmap that makes the most sense for your organization. So to start then, we'll dive right in. We're going to share with you this video interview, this clip that I did with Greg Benton a few months ago. Greg is our Chief Strategy Officer here at Third Stage Consulting, and he and I had a chance to talk about how to get started on your digital transformation journey. So let's roll the clip and we'll come back and chat about it. For those that don't know you, maybe they haven't seen you on this podcast before, can you tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to Third Stage Consulting and what you do at Third Stage?
You know, for about the last 25 years, I've been working with enterprise applications and developing strategies and deployments, ERP systems, the whole realm of digital transformation initiatives. And in all of that time, we've seen a number of advances happen within the marketplace. A lot of changes happening with ERP systems, with the advent of AI, with the move to the cloud, even 15, 20 years ago. And in all of that time, there was really just kind of a missing component. And that was, how do organizations that are planning on embarking on this entire journey ensure that they're going to be successful throughout the journey, without having to really just take the gloves off and jump right in. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, is how do you prepare the organization? What do you look for up front to make sure that you don't fall into what the analysts say is about a 70% chance of failure in an ERP implementation, right? And it's not just about ERP anymore. It's about all those surrounding edge solutions and everything that runs your business, that makes up your digital enterprise operations, that makes up, everything that you need to be for the next 5 to 20 years. So that's where I think that third stage, and the reason why I'm here, really just is pulling the blanket off of, what do we need to do up front? How do we need to approach it? How do we need to be successful in this all the way through as an organization? That's the thing that I love about our business and our firm.
Yeah, absolutely. Is our ability to help guide those companies that are getting started on their projects and help them navigate it in a way that's smart. And when you look at where a lot of organizations are right now as we enter 2025, a lot of them have new fiscal year budgets. A lot of them have new initiatives they're getting started on. A lot of them are sort of regaining momentum after having a few weeks of holidays and other stuff sort of slowing down work activity. So a lot of times January is the time a lot of companies are ready to jump in and start doing stuff, and it can be daunting. So we want to talk about what stuff should you be doing and how should we get started, and how can we sort of not boil the ocean, but get started, incrementally in a way that's sort of aligned with what you're trying to accomplish as an organization.
In the U.S., we have a new president coming into office.
Yeah. That changes things for a lot of organizations, or it sort of changes the way they think about their strategy or their approach going forward. There's obviously all the geopolitical stuff that goes into effect for a lot of countries at the start of the year as well. So just to help us get started, though, like sort of just starting at a bigger picture or higher level, what do you think organizations should be doing to prioritize as they plan for their digital transformation and ERP implementations for 2025? So in other words, how do they, there's so many things you could be doing right now. We could all be implementing tons of new technologies, and we could be trying to boil the ocean and just going, doubling down on technology initiatives. But how do we realistically get started on that and make sure that we are getting started in a way that's aligned with our goals and objectives as a company?
Well, I think you said it when you said boil the ocean. A lot of organizations decide that, yes, this is the year we're going to embark on all of these digital strategies that we've been discussing over the last couple of years, possibly a couple of decades. And it begins with organizational alignment. The digital transformation is made up of people, process, and technology, right? And very often technology projects are embarked upon for the sake of the technology, and it very often doesn't take into account the people side of the equation, the process side of the equation. Process side of the equation is really what is going to affect and improve our business processes going forward. And so taking a look at where current systems and current processes kind of come together and are not working well, you need to identify those gaps, figure out exactly how you're going to approach it as both an executive team and then all the way down through the organization to manage the processes that you want to improve and move into a new way of operating. That requires a very introspective view of the organization. we call that loosely executive alignment, but it's alignment of the whole organization around a move forward strategy that doesn't include boiling the ocean. It includes, in some cases, spot replacement of technology, but very often you have to look at the overall business as a whole and your business planning for the next 3 to 5 years and pulling the planning together. And so we refer to this as kind of a phase zero approach. You're looking at both the people, process, and technologies in alignment with your business planning as in many cases, a 3 to 6 month view of how are we going to prepare the organization to move forward in a measurable and considerable way. You've seen that a lot with many of our clients. Very often when people don't go through that phase zero and that preparation, organizational prep, then it is a recipe for failure.
Yeah, largely because you don't get the alignment between whatever the overall strategy is of the organization and the digital transformation or ERP project. It's easy to just sort of focus on the technology, the shiny object, and just jump in and start deploying it. But if you don't take the time to do that phase zero, you end up usually getting a disconnect between what the strategy is of the company and the actual initiative. And so it's a way to sort of help bridge that gap and give you a foundation or a blueprint for deploying and pursuing technology in a way that aligns with your goals and objectives. So what are some good ways that you've seen organizations align their digital transformation goals with their broader business goals and objectives in the new year?
Well, I'm a big believer in the business plan. So many organizations just really take the time to get down to what is our strategic plan? How do we put that together from both a budget and a deployment standpoint? What is it going to take from a resource perspective? How many people are we going to tap within our organization to move this initiative forward? What is the total cost of ownership? And how do we measure that total cost of ownership against the return on investment? So nothing measured, nothing gained. If you don't upfront put together that comprehensive business plan as a part of any initiative, you're not going to know exactly who to look for on the technology side for the right solution for your organization. And you're not going to know exactly how much it's going to cost you and how many people, how many resources you're going to need in addition to the people that you have, or how can your internal team and your wicked smart people, as one of my Massachusetts friends said the other day, contribute to the program in a way that is going to be meaningful all the way throughout without overwhelming them, right? So it really takes that circumspect view of how are we going to move forward? What are we going to look at? How are we going to make it happen all the way along? Yeah, makes total sense. I want to turn to the audience real quickly and just say hello to a few people that have chimed in with their location. Darian on LinkedIn says, good morning. Derek is joining from Dallas, Texas. Thanks for being here, Derek. C. Lynch is here from Plymouth, Massachusetts. So speaking of Massachusetts, I've got at least one person here from that region that might understand the wicked smart comment better than most. Chris would understand that. Yes. Yep. And then just not to get political here, but Rasim on YouTube says, I have hope for a second Trump period, less interest, more work. But the reason I wanted to bring up the part 2 of this comment is he has a strong relationship with tech bros. So it will be interesting to see how, not just in the United States, but other parts of the world, as geopolitical stuff shifts, how does that affect the technology world? How does that affect enterprise tech and digital transformations in general? That'll be interesting to watch here in the coming months in the coming year. But you mentioned before, Greg, you talked about this phase zero concept, and you talked about how phase zero is a way to mitigate against the risk of failure. It doesn't guarantee you're not going to fail, but it certainly gives you better odds than if you don't do a phase zero. Could you maybe help us explain why
why that is? You know, why is phase zero so important to mitigating the risk of failure? And more importantly, how is phase zero so important to ensuring that you can be successful in your project?
Sure. You know, a lot of people, a lot of organizations, which are people, really just don't even understand exactly what they look like from, a readiness perspective. And so phase zero allows us to step back just a little bit and really understand what is the capacity of our organization, of our people, to undergo the amount of change that we're going to be asking for in both a technical and a process development of a digital transformation. And there are two types of digital transformations. You can talk about a digital transformation with a capital T, as I like to say. So the digital transformation with a capital T, you're looking really mostly at a technology change. And so you're jumping in with perhaps an ERP vendor and you're going straight forward. And you're essentially, in my mind, jumping off of a cliff into, we're going to go straight forward into implementation once we decide exactly who we're going to use for the ERP. That doesn't take into account anything that's going on within your organization, within your four walls, or your multiple walls, in terms of the people side of change. How are they going to react? How are they going to go along with the program? How is our process going to change to adapt to new technologies, or vice versa? How are we going to keep some of the technologies that we have in place that we can't replace right now, and sequence around them and with them to get the overall digital enterprise operations intact and moving forward? So there are so many little nuances that come into this as you're embarking on the whole technology change, that if you don't spend that upfront phase zero piece in really understanding where you're going to run into pitfalls, you're going to run into pitfalls. So, that's just one of the things that's overlooked in many cases. You just jump right in and go forward. And that's where we very often run into very, very great client partners that say, yeah, we started on this in the wrong way. Can we back up a little bit and restart in the right way? And we are seeing that all the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, and I agree with you. We've had a lot of clients, a number of clients over the years that have asked us to help them sort of back up and take a step back, and not to slow things down necessarily, but just to grease the wheels. I mean, really what you need to do at times is sometimes you get so much momentum going on these projects, especially when you start getting in the technical consultants and they just start designing and testing and building stuff. There's always plenty of work to do, regardless of whether or not you're going the right direction. There's always plenty of work you could be doing. So it's easy to get caught up in all that and sort of lose sight of what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you want to be when you grow up with your business processes, how you want to be organized, how you want to change people's jobs, all that stuff. And so I guess long way of saying it's really never too late to start phase zero, is it? Even if you're midstream, there can be value, maybe not in pausing completely necessarily, although some organizations we work with have put a complete timeout on the project to sort of get their ducks in a row. But even if you don't do that, even if you're still keeping the project moving, you could sort of back up and in parallel do some of this phase zero stuff to help you pivot and redirect the direction you're going with the project. Is that something you see as well?
Absolutely. We have a very great client, and a partner that's been with us for many years now. And we completed the implementation of a new system, new ERP system. We are now going back through, and we did process aligning. We're doing process management now and getting to process optimization. And part of the process optimization work is really just tying back the benefits that are being received now in working with the new system, and tying those to, the implementation of the new system has given us certain benefits, but we didn't recognize what those benefits were because we never measured how we were doing things before. So that process mapping and then tying that or aligning it with the benefits that have been received by the thing that should have been done up front, but now it's being done after the implementation, and it's actually producing great results because now the executive team and the board are looking at some of the things that are saving, frankly, millions of dollars, avoiding a lot of risk in terms of the technology changes and the transformation that's already occurred, but we're doing it in arrears. We're doing it after the fact. So yeah, any point along the journey, phase zero can come back into play for sure, but it's absolutely best to do it up front.
Yeah. So if you're just getting started on your project now, we wouldn't suggest just go ahead and get started and do phase zero later. If you can do phase zero now before you get started, that's obviously the ideal scenario. But if you didn't, if you're already midstream and you've already gotten through a certain part of the project, it can be super beneficial to at least cherry pick some pieces of what you might do in phase zero to incorporate that into your overall plan. There's some interesting audience comments here and questions. First of all, William joining from LinkedIn says, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, William. And then X Devet from South Africa is here. And X has a point here or a comment, great time for businesses in South Africa to consider transformative drives as the upswing in the economy is foundation to link an emerging markets with the world. So back to the point of, you kind of have to look at what is happening with your business and with the economy in general, and how can you take this phase zero, the planning concept and the whole digital transformation strategy you pursue, how can you take that and apply that in a way that takes into account some of these macro external factors, as well as obviously the internal strategy that you're pursuing. But here's a question I want to get to that sort of segues into some other questions I have. This is from William on LinkedIn. William says, what kind of tools are there or could there be to ensure phase zero is done thoroughly and smoothly? So could you walk us through, the tools and or just the high level approach or some of the
Sure.
pieces? I know we've got a whole PowerPoint deck that we dive into with clients to really unpack this concept in a bit more detail. And it's hard. We're consultants, so you and I might have a little trouble unpacking this verbally instead of having our PowerPoint to fall back on. But could you maybe just summarize some of the components of phase zero or some of the things to be thinking about as we think about phase zero?
Yeah, there are two ways to approach this, right? You can do this internally, and certainly your bright people, your wicked smart people, and the teams that you put together for transformation can really develop an assessment of the organization from both a technical standpoint and a process standpoint. People readiness, understanding where people sit, how many people would be needed for the initiative that we're about to embark on, budgets, finance, all of that stuff can be pulled together internally. At third stage, we use a series of tools and methodologies that are really just very well outlined in what we call the pre-launch checklist. So on our website, you can go in, you can pull down the pre-launch checklist. That'll get you started in a very great way in terms of kind of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps that should be taken in order to really understand where you need to be as an organization to get to where you want to go. Begin with the end in mind, right? So what do we want this to look like at the end, and how do we get there? And then just back into everything that's going to make that happen. With us, we do bring these proprietary tools to understand exactly what the organization is capable of from a people standpoint. We have a number of surveys and executive alignment workshops that we pursue to understand and really quantify what the ability and the willingness to move forward in synchrony is all about. Likewise, we have tools that can actually dive into the technical aspects of the infrastructure, the number of systems that you have working, the interoperability of those systems. One of the other failure points, if you will, for digital transformations is the failure to properly manage data, right? So the data migration piece, the data understanding of the data and item and vendor master information, data cleansing, preparing the organization in that way to be able to move forward is something that many organizations can do internally, but it's better done with a third party coming in and actually providing an objective view of what is the real picture here and how can we help you in moving forward that data strategy and everything else that needs to come together.
Yeah. And I just popped up a QR code that you can use to download that pre-launch checklist from our website if you'd like. So just scan that.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet. I mean, you're doing all the talking, so I had time to go put up a QR code there for you to give everyone access to that. So hopefully that helps as you guys are scanning that, and I'll pop it back up again later too, because I'm going to take it down in a second to get some more questions, but I'll put it back up in a few minutes. But I do want to get to a couple other questions here that we're getting a lot of questions now coming in, but here's one from X Devet again. How do we package big company transformation strategies for small to medium-sized companies that are highly dynamic and have smaller budgets? I think that's a great question. So how do we right size this whole phase zero concept to scale it up or down depending on how big we are and what our budget is and the scope of our project and all that good stuff?
I really love that question because think about this. I mean, if you're building a house, you're going to go to a general contractor or a builder or someone to help you understand exactly what kind of house you want to build, where you're going to put it, how you're going to go through the entire process of constructing that house. Doesn't matter if you're constructing a 2-bedroom bungalow or you're constructing, 15-room mansion, something like that. I see the phase zero in the same way. Scaling up, whether you've got, 3 people on your core team or you've got 30 people on your core team for the digital transformation that you're planning on embarking on. The phase zero approach may be shorter for a smaller organization and involve fewer people, but there really is a scale in that. And, the important point is not to avoid or forget that the upfront planning and the upfront, business case for doing this is the important thing. And it's even more important for smaller organizations that may have a limited budget, that may have limited capacity in terms of their people. Their people are not going to be participating in a full-scale implementation of new software that lets them take their day job and put it aside and do something on the implementation project teams for a year. That's not going to happen in a smaller organization. So it's even more critical for the smaller and mid-sized businesses to go through this process.
I'm here playing you the clip of my interview with Greg Benton talking about how to get started on your digital transformation journey. I've got a lot more to cover with Greg, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling, the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, which is also the independent tech-agnostic transformation consulting firm that is the sponsor of this show. I'm here with Greg Benton. We're talking about digital strategy and how to get started on your digital transformation roadmap. Let's jump back into the conversation.
What do you think, Eric? I mean, in terms of scale, time, size of the kind of the phase zero approach. I think you can scale it up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's easy to think, well, we're a small or mid-sized company, so it's not as important to us since we don't have the budget or whatever. But the way I'd look at it is actually phase zero is a time and budget saving initiative. It may sound like in the short term on paper that you're spending more time and money that you don't necessarily have. But the reality is by investing that time and money in phase zero, you're going to make the actual meat of the execution of the implementation is going to be way more efficient, and you're going to have a lot less wasted money, a lot less wasted value because you've spent the time up front on phase zero. And so that actually speeds things up and saves money later on. So I would argue that the net benefit is positive, whether you're a small company or a large organization. Now, obviously, you don't want to get caught up in analysis paralysis and spend, months and years on phase zero and never get to the actual implementation. And you don't want to do that either. You don't want to go to the other extreme, but you do want to spend a certain amount of time, for our clients, it could range anywhere from, you tell me, you know better than I do, but, a small company might just be a few weeks of phase zero planning, but a big company, we have some big companies where we might spend 4, 5, 6 months on phase zero. Sounds like a lot of time, but when you think of a 3-year project, 4-year project, 5-year project, whatever it is, you're sort of setting the tone and setting the trajectory for how that remainder is going to go and how efficient and effective you're going to be. So is that, are those numbers sound right to you as far as like the range of how long phase zero typically takes, depending on the size of the company?
I think you hit it right on. It can be 3 weeks. It can be, 3 to 6 months. Very often it's 6 months on larger firms. You mentioned something about the cost. If you look at kind of the cost of a phase zero, it's not that expensive in terms of the whole organization and moving everything forward. You're not at this point buying software, entering into a subscription, implementing the software. but you're doing a lot of the upfront data cleansing. You're doing a lot of the upfront analysis of how are our teams going to come together, establishing governance, establishing all of those things that in jumping off the cliff and jumping in with a technology change, they go forward. Very often you end up stalling after 2 or 3 months of the implementation because your data is not cleansed, your data is not ready to be migrated. Your people aren't available for testing processes. How many times have we seen that a phase 0 can actually reduce the overall implementation of an enterprise system by 10 to 15% easily. So if you've got a 12-month implementation at the end of your full analysis, everything else is moving forward, you can take 1 to 2 months off of that in putting together a phase 0 that's preparing the organization to move forward before you embark on the entire thing.
Yeah.
So very, very important in terms of cost savings. And then the time that's saved, if you can shave 1 to 2 months off of an implementation of a new ERP system, for example, that's tens, hundreds, perhaps even millions of dollars saved.
Yeah. So you compare that to the time and cost you spend up front on phase 0, and usually you can justify it by looking at the efficiency gains or the savings you have throughout the project, especially if you're a multinational, multi-site rollout of new technology. It's even more important, if you're trying to figure out how you're going to create a common operating model or common business processes or whatever the case may be. Which brings me to this question from Julio on YouTube. Julio says, in reference to phase 0, understand planning but without knowing how future state processes can be done. How can you plan just knowing current state processes? So in other words, if I even if I know what technology we're going to be deploying as part of this digital transformation, I may not know all the details of how those future state business processes are going to work. So how do we bridge that gap between current state processes that we know we want to change, but plan in a way that gives us that blueprint to that foundation for building the technology to meet that future state?
Well, I think that that's a great comment. If you have the wherewithal as an organization to go through the entire current state, future state process mapping and management up front, that's great. Most organizations really just need to look at the current state and align that with what they expect in the future state. Very often, the software systems as well as the process changes themselves are going to come along with your plan for the digital transformation. So current state, understanding exactly how things work today is imperative so that that you can understand or see. I use understand too much. So that you can see exactly how we want to map that to what we're going to be doing in the future. The software in some cases may dictate that. In some cases, you may want to look at your smartest people, your wicked smart people internally and say, all right, this is the way that this maps out today. How can we improve that? How can we eliminate some of the roadblocks that we see in a given process and mitigate that with either software or even just changing the way that we do things? It's not always a software question. It's not always a technology question. Very often it's a way that we do things internally. And that introspective look at what your current processes are gives you the ammo to be able to really just judge how we're going to make changes happen.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that with many of our clients right now, that process mapping exercise that I was just describing that we're doing post implementation. Do that up front and do it along the way. to the point of the message that came across the screen, it really is important that you link your future expected processes to the current state. But the current state mapping is important.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the future state, you're obviously in phase 0 not going to get down to the granular screen by screen instructions on how to perform transactions. That's not the level of detail we're getting at in phase 0. Where we're getting at is more macro, looking at just in general, how are our processes going to work? How do we want them to look? And you start making decisions that if you don't make them early on in phase 0, it ends up slowing down the project and creating delays later on. So for example, if I'm a multinational organization and I've got a dozen different locations, let's just say, I may have acquired several of those dozen locations and they've got different ways of operating. And I'm using this project, or I want to use this project as a way to create standard processes across those dozen locations. So you want to take that time up front to figure out how are we going to change those 12 locations into one common set of business processes at that macro level. And that alone, even without getting down into the details of how you're going to do it and configure it in technology, even just making the macro decisions around how our processes are going to work, that just takes time. And that's where the internal alignment becomes so important. And you might as well, I hate to say slow things down, but you might as well work through that messy process of defining future state processes up front so that when you start deploying technology, things are more clear. So your technology consultants know exactly how they should be designing and building software. Your project team knows what the future state is going to look like, all that stuff.
You're exactly right. The way that these things come together, when we're talking about transformation, right? We've got an equation that we often cite, which is old processes plus new technology NT equals expensive old processes. That really just kind of refers to the whole process of improving things for your organization as you go through this digital transformation. Transformation is all about change, right? Transformation is current state to a future state that is much better optimized future state. So it's going to happen along the way. You have to have internal, people, your internal teams that are going to be dictating how this works, how this comes together. But it's an iterative process that goes along the whole linear transformation process. So I think that's a great question that was asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And shifting gears from business processes to data. Here's a question about, because you mentioned data before, and this is from Keith on LinkedIn. Keith asks the potentially controversial question. Data migration has been around for decades with well-structured procedures and established processes. What's the big deal? And how, more specifically, how is phase 0 and the stuff you're talking about, Greg, and all the planning work that should happen up front? How does or should data fit into that phase 0?
Well, I mentioned at the beginning, for the last 25 years, I've been working with especially ERP deployments and the strategies that go into those deployments. And probably 60% of the time, I agree with you, Keith, that was it Keith or Doug? Sorry. Keith. These have been established for a long time. It never fails. We get 2-3 months into an implementation and somebody says, you know what, our master data is really a mess. We just didn't realize. So now we've got to go back and we've got to cleanse things. And cleansing doesn't mean that scrubbing your data and so forth. It really means that you're normalizing your data so that you can put it into the new system. There are tools to help with that, but it doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen, especially in some organizations with, 20-year-old and 40 different disparate sources of data within an organization, that it can all come together and all be nicely managed all the way through. It just doesn't happen that way. So phase zero is a way to look at how do we clean house before we actually embark on this whole thing. So great question, Keith. I mean, it's not really a question, it's a statement. There are some great tools out there, tons of them.
Yeah, and surprisingly, people, even though these tools and processes have been around for a while, as Keith mentions, organizations still oftentimes don't use them. So it's important to kind of figure that out too up front. And how are we going to clean our data? How are we going to map it to the new system? How are we going to migrate it? How are we going to handle master data management and governance, data governance longer term? You know, it sounds pretty simple, but a lot of these organizations out there don't do that or think through that until late in the project. And again, that causes delays because now all of a sudden we're thinking about data. We should have been thinking about it a long time ago, but we didn't. So now we're trying to figure out and scramble on how we're going to handle data migration and forget data governance. We don't have time to think about that. So we end up cleaning up data, moving it over, and then we don't have processes to support clean data longer term. So I'm oversimplifying what happens there oftentimes, but that is, you know, I don't know if you agree with that, Greg, but that's a lot of times what organizations do. They put it off as sort of an afterthought and then wonder why their project got delayed all because of data.
Or they put it in the hands of a systems integrator or a software vendor that says, we have these set of tools, we've got a factory, we've got a data migration factory. We'll just basically plug everything into one side and pull it out of the other. Oh, wait, just a minute. Your data is, corrupt. You're missing fields in certain areas. Your units of measure are disparate across all of your global locations. Nobody tells you up front that these tools don't work unless everything is managed to go into the tools. So
right. Yeah. You go in with the
assumption
that
more.
the data is clean.
Yeah.
But it's usually not. But yeah, the SI is going to assume you've cleaned that data up and it's ready to go. And that becomes a blind spot in the projects oftentimes.
Well, in fact, if you look at contractually, it's always the organization's obligation to have clean data. And very rarely. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. Now, here's a question. I missed this in the feed or in the thread earlier, but I want to come back to this point because I think this is an excellent question. This is from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, so we were talking earlier about how it's better late than never to do phase zero. If you can do it up front, if you haven't started your project yet, it's best to do phase zero now. But even if you are midstream and you haven't done this phase zero stuff, it can be of huge value to either slow things down, pause, and revisit some of those phase zero activities, or at the very least do some things in parallel while the project continues. But when we look at those sorts of projects that are midstream, what are some of the most common signals that indicate a project needs to pause or revisit a phase zero strategy midstream? So, are there certain symptoms or signs that we see with our clients that would suggest that, hey, you didn't do phase zero and here are the symptoms, so let's go back and clean that stuff up and start to address some of that phase zero stuff? What are some of the symptoms we should be looking for?
Very much so. There's basically two different areas in my mind. So we see a lot of our clients actually get to a point in the implementation project where they are stalled out. They start doing unit testing and they start doing SIT. Even further on in the project, getting to CRP. The testing is not showing that the software capabilities are aligning with the processes that they are supposed to be governing and managing. Requirements have not been properly gathered, and the requirements are not matching up with the software that's being implemented. And so the project kind of grinds to a halt. That happens very often. We get called in and back up, take a better stock of the requirements, looking at data cleansing, data management, and it's not a long pause, but very often it's a pause that is required so that they can go forward properly. The other one is what we've been talking about with the data migration. the data just isn't there to be migrated into the new system. It's going to cause a lot of the business processes that go on within an organization to slow down or halt because the data is just not ready to go into the new system. They have to revert to old ways of doing things in order to find materials in the warehouse, that type of thing. And that can drag an implementation. So those are the two areas. I would say data as well as business requirements matching up with the software that's being implemented are the two main things that I see. What do you see on that, Eric? Is that?
Well, another one is that I would add to that list is when you start to see the organizational and human resistance to change. So in other words, when you start to see that people are resisting change and people are starting to panic a little bit, they're starting to freak out a little bit because of all the changes that they're hearing about or the rumblings they're hearing about. When you start seeing that, that's usually a sign that you haven't done enough on the change management front, which is typically part of phase 0 as well. Typically in phase 0, you're also assessing the organization to figure out what that change strategy should be and what sort of tactics you should employ to ensure that you're addressing the human dimension of change. So that'd be another one I add to that list. And then
great add. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And then I guess another one too, that sort of popped in my mind as you were saying that is another symptom is oftentimes when there's a lot of uncertainty or lack of clarity around, I'd say it's sort of the architecture and decommissioning approach to technology. So in other words, you've got these legacy systems. We don't really know what's going to happen to them. Are we going to pull the data out of them and replace them? Is that in scope to get rid of that system? How are we going to get rid of the system? Or are we going to keep it and we're going to integrate it to the core, new technology stack that we're deploying? If so, how are we going to do that? So a lot of times you start to, if you can't answer those questions, that's a good sign that you should be having a clear, technology plan, not just for deploying new technology, but how you're going to address decommissioning old systems or integrating legacy systems where you need to. So all that stuff can slow things down or speed things up depending on.
Great point.
Yeah. And just a follow up here from Julio.
I mean, you hit on the one that I missed in the very beginning, the organizational change, the people part. If you run into resistance, halfway through a project, that can kill a project. You're going to have people that are reverting to old processes. They're refusing to participate on project teams. They're being overwhelmed because they're being asked to do their day job as well as participate on the project team. Project team has, been demanding a lot of time over an extended period of time, and projects just grind to a halt. So, I mean, you got to keep the business running, right? So that's what you prevent up front with that, beginning with the organizational change kind of approach to phase 0 and getting the people part of the equation in line as well. Yeah. Good point here.
Yeah. I think you were just setting me up so that you're kind of leaving that for me, the softball there for me to comment on there.
No. You hit that out of the park on your own.
So what about, here's an interesting question. And we haven't talked a lot. You mentioned it a couple times, but we haven't gone into this in a lot of detail yet, Greg. But this is from Dennis on YouTube. Dennis says, how do you help organizations understand or recognize if the technology implementation team measures up to the tasks? And I might add to that too. How do you know if you have enough of, how do you know that you have the right team in place? Not just the skills, but also the number of people or the capacity you need on the project. How do you assess that, and how does that fit into phase 0?
Well, that is a bit of an iterative process, and it's a great question because the whether you've got a technical implementation team that is a third party that is outside, that is coming in as a consulting organization, or it's also your internal people, it really requires taking a look at what we call a program management level. So program management is established so that anybody that's working on the project, the PM, everyone else associated with the implementation project is being evaluated all the time. Is everyone capable of carrying their weight in terms of the implementation process? Do they have the right credentials, the right acumen to be able to pull this forward? Are the people on the client side of the equation able to put in enough time? Or do we need to find some backfill, or do we need to find some additional resources to pull in to help the implementation team move forward? And that's the program management discipline that we put on top of the overall project. SIs, systems integrators, absolutely want a software system that they are very adept at putting in place from a technical standpoint, putting it in place, moving on. And they're very, very bad at self-governing. So if somebody is just not carrying their weight in terms of the project team, very seldom will the systems integrator say, hey, you know what? Marcus is not carrying his weight, so we're going to replace him. They're not very good at that at all. And the transition is not very smooth. Very often it becomes almost, it's a catastrophic thing. We realize that Marcus is not carrying his weight. We need to replace him. So we're going to let him go and bring somebody else in, but there's a gap, right? So the program management of the overall kind of governance of the entire thing, the entire digital transformation, needs to happen at a higher level than just the project team level. And that's how you assure that you've got everybody participating on both sides, on the client side, on the technical implementation team side, all the way through. So bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, my allergies are attacking me right as we're wrapping up here. But so I guess what I'm going to pop up here on the screen again, the pre-launch checklist. So I encourage everyone who's watching this podcast on one of the visual platforms, I encourage you to scan the QR code. And if you're on the audio only platform, we'll include a link in the show notes below. But while I leave this up on the screen for the audience to scan here, Greg, we've covered a lot of ground here today as far as all the different dimensions or some of the different dimensions of phase zero and how to plan for digital transformation in the new year. And it's a lot of stuff, but if we were to sort of boil it down even more, if you were to summarize, the ways to just get started on phase zero, what would some of the, couple points you leave us with as a takeaway?
Business case development. So you need to understand how you can align your technology goals with your business strategy, right? As an organization. Executive alignment. So really just from the top down, getting buy-in to move forward with the entire project. So those two things, I think, are really kind of the first two pieces that you have to put in place in order to move forward with the rest of it. The business case is important because not only do you determine exactly what the budget is going to be, you get permission from the board, from the rest of the organization to move forward in this way. You also have the resources that are allocated for it, but it also allows you to measure it at the end. So the promise has to be there that we are going to take what we have today, we're going to look at it from a business case standpoint, and then we're going to measure it at the end and see how we did. And I think that's the most important part of getting started.
Yeah.
How would you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the requirements and the alignment, I think those are, or I'm sorry, the business case and the alignment are really important because that sort of gives you that you're sort of starting at the highest level. What is our strategy? What are we trying to accomplish with this transformation? Business case obviously quantifies some of that intangible or tangible stuff. And then from there, you can start to build on and layer on some of the other things that we've talked about, like the business processes and requirements and even the change strategy. What's the change strategy given now that we fully understand what our overall direction is? Certainly the architecture and data integration plan, all that stuff can come later. But I agree with you that internal alignment, getting on the same page with what this project is, what it means to the organization, and how, what are those high level governing principles for the project, and how does that translate into a business case that we can manage to the cost and also manage to the benefits of what we expect to get out of it. So that was the interview I conducted with Greg Benton a few months ago. Hopefully that gives you some ideas and things to think about as you get started on your digital transformation journey. And we're going to shift gears here and bring on Jan Baan. We're going to talk about composable ERP and that movement away from monolithic ERP systems toward composable ERP. If you don't know what it is, don't worry. We'll get into what exactly is composable ERP, and we'll give you some guidance and tips to see if it's something that might make sense for your organization. So we'll get to that next, and then stick around beyond that, because we're also going to still get to our comparison of SAP versus Oracle versus Microsoft. We're going to get into AI-enabled enterprise technologies, those top ERP systems and top enterprise tech systems that are best leveraging AI so far as we know it as of today. And then we'll also get into the 4 digital strategies, the major digital strategies you have to choose from, and how to assess and determine objectively which digital strategy is the best one for your organization. So a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say. Tell me, I've been waiting for so long to hear the truth.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I want to invite you to join me and other thought leaders in the digital transformation space to Stratosphere 2025. It's an annual conference we've hosted now for 7 years in a row. It's a great event. It's live in Denver, Colorado, but we're also offering it virtually via hybrid tickets. And we're going to have a lot of different speakers here, including myself as a keynote, as well as others that you may know from industry. And this is a perfect conference if you're interested in any sort of digital transformation, including ERP and CRM and HCM. And actually, the theme for this year's session is AI, and how AI is affecting all different types of digital transformation. But in addition to AI, we'll also talk about the fundamentals of digital transformation, including program management, evaluating the right software, digital strategy, change management, process improvement, all the things you need to know to make your project successful. It's also a great way to network and learn from others. So just being part of a community that is also like-minded and going through the same things you are, that's another value. And you can join, like I said, remotely, in person, and you can also buy VIP tickets if you'd like more exclusive access to me and others from the Third Stage team and other speakers that are going to be there. So I hope to see you soon. Check out my discount code below for discounted tickets. You can go to stratosphere2025.com for more information, including the full agenda, and I hope to see you there.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm, and it's a company that I'm the CEO of, and we help clients with their digital strategies, software selections, their implementation planning, their PMO program management, their change management, business process improvement, and a bunch of other services related to digital transformations. You can learn more about us by going to thirdstage-consulting.com. And the show is produced by Major Tom Productions. So if you'd like to learn about how to collaborate with us on this podcast, I've included contact information below for the person at Major Tom that you can reach out to regarding that. So I'm excited to share with you this next clip. This is one of my favorite interviews of the last several months that I've done on this podcast. And this is with Jan Baan, who's sort of a godfather or pioneer of the ERP software industry. He founded Baan Software back in the 70s. Which if you're not familiar with Baan Software, they were actually a pretty big deal before SAP came along. In fact, they were sort of the SAP of the ERP market at the start. And then SAP came along and sort of overtook their position as the dominant ERP system in the 90s and beyond. But Jan Baan has since moved on from Baan Software and started another firm called Rapid. And I'll let him describe his background. But the reason I wanted to have him on the show was to talk about composable ERP and how we're moving away from that old monolithic ERP model towards a more composable ERP. So we'll talk about what it is and whether or not it's something that makes sense for you. So with all that being said, let's jump into the conversation.
We don't see you, but we can hear you. So if you want to maybe chime in, and could you tell us just a little bit about your background and sort of your history and journey, how you got to where you are today?
I started in 1978, 46 years ago, my company, and came by accident involved by ERP. Some people later on we say, is the term okay? Is it enterprise? I think it became never enterprise. It's maybe entity resource planning, or sometimes we call it enterprise resource problems. But okay, if you look to ERP, it's complicated how to build all this stuff together in one database, etc. Now, I came quite early in Unix. We were one of the first Unix players there in the 80s. With the Baan shell, and then with HP helped us tremendous, and we became one of the leaders together with SAP in the 90s. And especially winning the Boeing deal with 40,000 users propelled us on as a leading player. And also what we then came did an IPO in 95. But then the company changed a little. After the IPO, I should say, you see the culture is changing from customer intimacy to shareholders' value. And it became then to a certain point like an institute with 5,000 people, close to $700 million revenue. That was in the 90s. And I came to the conclusion after 20 years, I felt a little obsolete because ERP was never built for the browser. And there it became extremely big, more M&A driven. I quit. I changed my role with Tom Tinsley, a top McKinsey guy, where I was a little in the back end and still evolved. But then I started again. I came to the conclusion because I invested in two companies, WebEx and Top Tier, two leading companies on those days on SaaS elements. I was the only shareholder, the first shareholder in WebEx. I had 30% of the shares. And in Top Tier, I had a majority share. And there I learned the world of microservices and even what you say, the world of the internet. And there I came to the conclusion, can I not combine this one in the slipstream of ERP? Can I then not bring these microservices together? But I failed because the board was not in favor. Clayton Christensen, your favorite guy, and I like him very much, with what you see in this innovator's dilemma, he's saying then disruptive innovation have no chance in an existing company. And I learned that. And I came to the conclusion I cannot do it, and I quit and I start again with disruptive innovation in what we call in Cordis. And there was a BPM company like what we see like Pega. We focus, instead of a silo, we focus on all the business processes and bring them there together. And that was an important element therein. Okay, and that was quite a big help to understand end-to-end processes. And then you have another view, because ERP is not process driven. The processes are fed from the logic of ERP, but realize ERP is not built for the processes. They do something to the process, but the process is stored in the concrete of SAP, of the data. And that's the limitation of ERP. And everything in one database, and then you have sometimes 100,000 database tables who are also real conflicting with each other, etc. It became extremely complicated. And that's what we see now. Therefore, it was so difficult to bring ERP to the cloud, if you look to it. Now,
So
that's more or less what I can do. Should I take a minute out? You can talk a little, and then I try. If I start again, let me do. You can talk, and then
That sounds good. And I'll lead it into a question, but I love everything you just said there, and I'll talk for a moment here and see if we can get the video back. What I find fascinating about Jan's background is that he sort of, well, first of all, he realized the limitations of a model he created back, in the 70s and 80s. By the early 2000s, I think that's the timeline he was suggesting there. By the early 2000s, he kind of knew that there were limitations, and that with the advent of the internet and the way these monolithic ERP systems were built back in the day, he knew that there were some limitations. It wasn't going to transcend the post Y2K internet-based world. And so I find that super interesting that he could see that 20 years ago. And I think, there were, people in the industry, I believe, that other people that might have recognized some of the limitations as well. But I think the problem 20 years ago was when he tried this best of breed approach that Jan is talking about. When you try that best of breed approach, and he's back. Thank you. We can see and hear you now. This is great. So I'm glad that worked out.
Okay.
So this is Jan Baan. He introduced himself, but this is what he looks like. I was just talking about how, it was interesting foresight you had 20 or 25 years ago, that the model you helped create, you recognized that it was becoming obsolete in the post, Y2K world. And I find that really fascinating. And so what is it about, you saw this need over 20 years ago. What is it that's changed in the space now? Like, why do you think composable ERP is a bigger deal now than it was?
Now, the question is, composing ERP is not a good word in reality, but I cannot change it. Gartner came with it. ERP can never be composing.
Right.
It's
kind of a contradiction.
It's not dynamic. It's not on metadata. And ERP can become composing when it is united with microservices. And that's what we're doing now. And I learned we built composing solutions, but it was in BPM. And it was done on metadata. You bring all this metadata together and have an end-to-end process. But that was in the infancy of the internet. And then I quit again. Chorus became part of OpenText, and I became again, and I moved from PaaS because we built platform as a service, but realized platform as a service is indeed like Salesforce, like ServiceNow is still built in the infancy of the internet, and not in the latest dynamic world. I moved again from PaaS to infrastructure as a service, especially with Google. And there you go in the data-driven, what we say, the semantic data world, and everything is there real dynamic. And these microservices, if you do it on big data, because realize also ERP is not built on big data. If you change one record, you're out. Now, I built already for 15 years, I'm on big data. And then what you see now, what you do, you bring in everything together. Now, but then you can ask yourself, why should you not build ERP again in the new technology? But it's not so easy because the kids of Google do not understand ERP. Right. ERP is master production scheduling driven, ERP, MRP, and all the logistics are there. The data model is extremely complicated. Now, and don't make a mistake to make it more complicated, to add more things. That's what we're doing today. We go to the cloud, and then you have vendor lock-in, and the vendors like to, they say, do not saying at your service, but they say, how can we milk you? It's the same element, at your service, milking the cow. It's vendor lock-in. And they hope that you do more and that you stay on the foundation of their data model. and that you bring all those AI also there, and then you destroy yourself. Now, I should say what I learned from manufacturing: if you build a car, then you have two elements. One element is in manufacturing decoupling, and the other element is in late binding. If you build a car, every 15 seconds, Tesla is producing a car. That means that an hour before you can make every decision what engine should go in. Now, not in an airplane. Then you have a project. But modern manufacturing, what software should be built on decoupling and late binding. And that's what we're doing. And with those two elements, decoupling and late binding, we adopted the input of an SQL database, call it ERP, and we reduce it, we call it sunset, bring it back to the fundamentals. Never do bespoke, because we kill ERP with bespoke. And why should we bespoke? Because bespoke is more human related. ERP is a transaction system. And it's not a BPM system. It's not a case-driven system. This transaction layer have a limitation, and then you kill it and you're out. And then you go to document management. Now, what BPM did, you have two elements. You have a transaction layer, and you have a case management-driven layer. And we call it, we unite them together. Now, that is what we can do today with the REST API. This technology is so amazing what we have today. Now, we can rebuild everything, but you win more on the downstream. It's better to adopt a vanilla system, could be even an on-prem system. Go not too early to the cloud if it makes no sense. Because it is good enough, because the more you go downstream, the more you have a value proposition. And AI is only the downstream. In the upstream, from the legacy system, is too complicated, and there's no need for it. Why should you bring AI in an ERP system? You need it, what Clayton Christensen is saying, the job to be done.
Right.
And what I learned now, when I started, we went to a silo. With 100,000 database, we had 10,000 database, was made more optimized. Now, then we moved in the beginning of the century, what we call two processes. But now we're moving to what we call the job to be done is not a process, it's a workflow. And these three elements are united. And some elements could be in a silo. Some elements you bring it to an end-to-end process, but then in a dynamic way, you go a step further, and then you go to dynamic workflow. And that is this AI-driven microservices. They are like Lego elements, very small components. You build it 10 times faster. You are 100 times more flexible. But still in these elements, you should not do everything like these complex data elements. In a car, you have a chassis. Now, the chassis is different than the dashboard.
Right. That's super interesting. And there's so much you covered there. And I love the way you opened that response with composable ERP by definition is a contradiction. Composable, it's not composable ERP. It's composable technology, which is different than ERP. Yeah,
and take it with a car. You have not to go under the hood. But you drive it. Suppose that you did your navigator under the hood and build it. We build it on the dashboard. And if you see the car, under the hood is for the time being good enough. You have four wheels and you have the chassis, and it's not changing. And you have a lot of mechanical elements. But if you go on the dashboard today with the modern cars, you have software. You have electronics, you have software. Now, and even in a Tesla, you have tremendous a lot of old technology under the hood. And therefore, don't make the mistake to make everything modern. Right. It's for the next 10 years, we can deal with this legacy ERP systems. It's like a bookkeeping system on the back end. They're good enough. But don't optimize them, then you kill yourself. And and the vendors are not teaching you that. Because they have only one element, you're locked in. And you cannot escape. And the vendor lock-in is a terrible element. Now, what we do with these microservices, they are generated in plain Java. There is no vendor lock-in. And the AI is totally incorporated. We do agentic AI. That's what Clayton Christensen is saying. He never was aware of agentic AI, was not there. But for the job to be done, you take an assistant, and the assistant is your agent. And in tomorrow's world, we bring your assistant with yourself to improve your document-related stuff in the downstream. But there is not so much to win in the totally upstream. And that is, we do the same as 40 years ago. All the processes are the same. Now, And over time, they will step by step replaced by small microservices. But we call that sunset. And that should be done in combination.
So speaking of microservices, I was going to ask you that as a follow-up. What are microservices and how does that fit into this concept of composable technology?
Now, microservices are like Lego blocks, are elements totally decoupled. They are built in the latest element of what we call of the internet. It's what the Dockerization, the containerization. And all the related elements like data are all united and synchronized automatically. Now, if you deal big stuff, you have not to do it. Sometimes it's better to have a central database. But the more you go downstream, then you have 10 times faster, but maybe 100 times more effective and extremely flexible because all the knowledge is isolated in a small component. And you have only, and also the development is done in an isolated way, totally decoupled. And in ERP, you do everything in a centralized way with hundreds of people, and the learning is 100 times more complicated. Now, microservices are self-learning. You can learn it 1 second before the transaction. Look how complicated stuff we do with social world, etc. We learn it in 1 second. Now, that is because the browser is the core element, and the browser is now was 20 years, 30 years ago related by the human, by the social element. Now, ERP was not built for the browser. There is no social element in it. That means people know nothing what is your Facebook data, etc. It could be maybe nice to integrate it. But we do not understand the job to be done. And the job to be done is an inheriting element of the process of ERP. And then is an executing element in a very small team, or maybe yourself is the best team, or maybe 3-4 people. And those people are no longer belonging to the same payroll. They are in the supply chain. They are dealing in different areas. Now, and what you see now by ERP, you have 2 pipes. ERP creates called the most complex pipe is the MPS ERP data. One times a day, and not only a few people understand that, but it's extremely complicated. And that pipe is dying very soon. But you have a totally other pipe, and it's what Gartner called, if you see customer data platforms, we know all the supply chain elements, and this pipe, the social pipe, is coming from this one. Now we are connecting those pipes. And the connecting point is we connect them in big data. We take the masterwork scheduling pipe, is an SQL database, very old-fashioned. It's all stored in concrete. All this logic is the same. Let's say, the earlier you decouple, the cheaper it is. The more you can build your Tesla car software, the better it is. The same. You have still the 4 wheels are the same, like 40 years ago, like 10 years ago. No, and those 2 data pipes are becoming now in a semantic way, what we call in the data, in Google's terms, we call it BigQuery. And all the social elements from the customer are incorporated there. And the microservice in 5 minutes sometimes, but in 2 days, they can permanently make what we call apps. And the apps are dynamic apps. And the apps are evergreen, we call it. The app, you should have always the latest technology. Now, and to do this, if we build it in a software factory. Now, and what is the core element of a factory? If you have a factory, the core element is a bill of material. And with the bill of material, you know everything. You have the layers, and then you know from the predicted maintenance, everything is there related to the bill of material. We took the same concept. We have an S-bomb. We build it on a software bill of material, and all the components everything we do is a manufacturing process. I'm a manufacturer. That's what we learn. And not so many people. The people who building these microservices are more toys builders. They are more an associate. They do not understand this ERP world. Now I'm connecting these 2 worlds. And if you have no element, because ERP is still the foundation. It's not the be-all and end-all of it, but it's the foundation to start. And what we see today in the world of the Googles, the Amazons, you're missing the knowledge of this ERP data. No one is connecting them, and we connect them totally. Now, and then you have a tremendous value, and the value is then on the end, you double at least your EBITDA. In today's world, there is no contribution to EBITDA from IT. Nothing. It costs more. It's we consuming EBITDA, we eating EBITDA instead of,
Right.
of delivering EBITDA. But here we can do it with half of the people in a two times better job.
Right. Right.
And therefore we need microservices, and therefore that's all what we say productized. And you do it in very simple elements. It's in you have your mobile, everything is mobility oriented. Now it could be your watch, but anywhere, and it's done in an extremely smart UX element. And we do it already for 20 years in UX. The UX is the intuitive part that you help your customer. With ERP, you destroy your customer because the simple end user has no clue what ERP means, and the job is becoming more complicated. If you are a truck driver and you have to deal with ERP data, it makes you even more complicated.
Right.
But the microservice, especially now with AI, they propelling you, and they bring you an agentic AI. That means they help you with a butler.
Right. It's a lot more intuitive and easier to navigate. And one thing that's interesting though, I'm going to pull up a question here if you don't mind, Jan. And this is a big but. Everything you said sounds really good, except there's a problem. There's a problem in the industry right now, and that is, I'm going to pull up this question here from Graham on YouTube. Graham says, further to that question, how does Jan view the role and impact of private equity on the enterprise software industry? And I'm actually going to broaden that question a little bit and say, I'll back up and make a bold statement here that there's a lot of money that a lot of investors, a lot of big tech vendors are benefiting from vendor lock, and they're benefiting from this monolithic ERP model. So there's a lot of money at stake here. There's a lot of private equity money going into the cloud and SaaS model within the ERP space. So how does that affect the viability of the innovative approach that you're talking about with composable technology and microservices?
First of all, there's always a problem. But Clayton Christensen already mentioned is what you say. You have. I like very much the way he talked over it. Is disruptive innovation is no chance, because disruptive innovation is coming with poor functionality in the beginning, and therefore you stay with the sustainable innovation, who is becoming more efficient innovation, and they're milking the cow. And those companies are making billions of market cap, 10 times revenue. And why is it that a manufacturing company is only making 1 times revenue? And they're making real products. And in software, we're making nothing. They have only skills. It's now even more worse. It's even more worse. All these ERP vendors are nothing compared to the 7 magnificent 7. They have 17,000 billions of market cap. Only 7 companies. All the ERP have only maybe 1 trillion. The Oracles and SAPs. That means they're even poor compared. Now, in tomorrow's world, that is wrong. Instead of 7 companies having 17,000 billions of market cap, it's better to have 70,000 manufacturing companies who are becoming unicorns.
Right.
Now, that will happen in the future. Now we see we are developing tools, and then we take the money as tool builders. But the money should go to the customer. That's the manufacturer. It's the retailer. And they are the poor guys. Because the money today is stuck in even only with the IT builders, the tool builders. But how could a tool builder, even if you on NVIDIA, you have only chips, but you're not having the end product. Now, I prophesize that it will change now. It changed with these microservices. Now, and how could I make this? Now, first of all, I had money when I left Baan Company, and I could start again. And I started, and I put $200 million as an investment in it without making money before. It was not easy. And I did it again. But there I make a mistake, and I did it without a customer. When I started now in Rapid again, Farnborough company, I had the reputation to deal with big companies, with a Vallejo, one of the top leading companies, 120,000 employees, with a Solvay. With my reputation, I put a new element to Clayton Christensen. Clayton Christensen said, disruptive innovation for chance. I did it now with customer intimacy. I took the customer intimacy and go from a top side. I take new technology and build then the missing elements on top of ERP. And therefore I could do this one. And I could finance also this one with the projects what I did with innovative big companies. Now, and there we learn a lot, and there I contribute to the EBITDA. Now, and let me go now a step further. We should focus on customer intimacy. And every customer should have a different model. Every car is different. Why should we have a generic stuff? Now, in a car, there are generic elements, they are more hidden. But in the configuration of software, on the end, everything should be customized. Everything. But in reality, maybe only 20% if you manufacturing it smart. It's maybe only 20%, but it's 20% is good for 90% of the profit.
Right.
And then we will have more competition. Now we have no competition. And then we do the most stupid stuff. We do AI by SAP and by Salesforce. And then Salesforce own your AI. Now AI should never be owned. It's the most dangerous element, never be owned by a vendor.
That's
AI, and what we do, we build AI with no vendor lock-in, and the AI belongs to the customer. Now, I have the benefit a little that I learned the generic part, but the customer owns the specific part. And now the AI is no longer produced to IT people. The business people, because it's consumerized, the microservices, the non-coding are so simple, the business people can do it for 100%. And in this late binding element, the later you do AI, the simpler it is and the more effective it is. Now, that means you asked me one question before when you sent me, but let me answer that question. What means IT will disappear in the future? The CIO will report to the COO and no longer becoming their direct. And what we see, IT should never be centralized. IT should become a component of the decentralized businesses. And that's what we do now. Because this microservice allows you that the business themselves build it. My customers are not going to big consultant firms. They build their software themselves. There's no need for the Capgeminis with 100,000 people, etc., and doing with this whole stuff. Right. Let me be straightforward therein. And Capgemini and Accenture, etc., they're milking the cow and they're struggling. You see, they're struggling tremendous to go with this reputation. They have in India hundreds of thousands of people, but the master is here and the slave is in India. And they are not involved with the latest technology elements. And it is big monsters of ERP, they make that, but that will change tremendous.
Right. Yeah, they're still stuck on this model of upgrading to cloud, big cloud, complicated ERP systems, which is, here's a really good question I want to get to. This is another question from Graham on YouTube. Graham says, another question, given the looming HANA deadline for SAP customers, what advice would Jan give to customers considering a composable ERP alternative? And this is true for not just SAP customers, but any of these big ERP, the big ERP vendors that have you locked in, that are trying to get you to lock in for another 10 to 20 years, which is exactly what the RISE program is for SAP, by the way. RISE is intended to lock you in long term. So how do you, is this a good opportunity?
A very good question. Thank you. And what you see now, first of all, is already wrong. Suppose you bought a car and you come into the garage and say, listen, you have to buy this new Jaguar or this anywhere big car in a year. Otherwise, I do no longer the services. Now, that is stupid. How could a vendor say, listen, I'm no longer serviced, and you have a perpetual license forever. Right. You have your license, and you give it up, and you will be milked totally. Because realize, if you come in the cloud, you can theoretically you can stop every day, but the implementation costs are so complicated. You can even maybe once a life you can even step out, and it means every time now they are in the driver's seat, the vendors, to increase every time your cost. That means perpetual is cheaper than on cloud. Now, okay, you should go new technology, but brings new technology a lot. Now, I should say, if you do it, take the minimum part, do half the users, because what you can do, if you take microservice, if you have 20,000 users ERP, you can do it with 10,000 users, maybe it's 500 users. Now, therefore, the more you bring to it, the more you have, all your downstream users should never be linked. Now, therefore, I should say, take your legacy system, continue, or replace it, do it only vanilla, nothing more, and absolute do it best of breed. Why should you not use Workday for your financials of another one, but why not a local one? PeopleSoft for CRM. PLM is ever by, you never should do it, you should do it in CAD/CAM. the CAD/CAM players are much stronger in PLM than the ERP players. And PLM is becoming maybe more advanced with CAD/CAM than ERP, if you look to it. Now, if you do that, then you decouple it. You are becoming more in the driver's seat. You are all locked in, but you are only locked in vanilla. Do not one statement bespoke, because then you cannot go to the new version. If it is vanilla, you can go in 1 minute to a new version. And it should become evergreen. But it's never evergreen, you stay for years. Now, there is no future for this traditional system, but we have to go for the next 10 years with it.
Right.
No.
Right.
And we should do it smart, and we should stay together, guys. We know, and we have many good friends, and even if we look, but we even Australia, we see many good friends. You did, my regrets. Also, if you look what we all doing, bring nice people together, and we should do it independent and make each other strong, because everything is now locked in this element.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, I see Tom Pierce there in. Okay, what witnesses are there? Nice to meet you, Tom. Now, we see all these people who have this knowledge, and it's good. They were also on your show there last year, but maybe on your next in August, your show, Eric, could be good. It could be an element to maybe unite some things around this element. I should say we should make each other strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jan's referring to our Digital Stratosphere conference that we're hosting in Denver. It'll also be streamed virtually to people that want to join remotely. And Jan, you're going to be one of the keynote speakers there. So we're excited to have you again this year. Your presentation last year was amazing, and I look forward to hearing it again.
I'm here with Jan Bond talking about composable ERP and how it might fit into your digital strategy. I've got a lot more to cover with Jan, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I'll give you anything to feel it coming. Do you wake up on your own?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
And I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete. Little pieces of nothing that fall.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling, and you can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. I'm here with Jan Bond talking about composable ERP and how to determine whether or not it's the right fit for your organization.
You know, one thing I want to ask you, though, is you talk about the smaller players, and there's another question I'm going to get to here from the audience about smaller players. What role does, and this is a very self-serving question, I'll admit. I'm going to ask you this question because it helps me. It benefits Third Stage, and I think it helps you too. But how are independent consultants like Third Stage Consulting and others, what role can they play in helping enable and facilitate this movement?
Realize there is nothing was independent. That means there is so much market cap and everything is paid by the market cap. And there's only one element. The choice was already SAP or Oracle before. And then everything is in a choice because you make the most money there. And the same partners are together and united together in the same firm. And it's the most dangerous part, what we have seen. And we are misled. We are totally misled in this element. You need help. But not only in the element, it's no longer a purchase part. It should be continuously, and you need the independent consultant to optimize your EBITDA, and it's not only to check it because you go to small components, and there is not so much on the front end to support, but more continuously support. And that is what we should see. At least the independent consultant can warn you and help you already in the beginning, but it should be forever. Because it's continuously improvement.
Right.
And I should say, always start small. If you go to these elements, it's too early to take everything in microservices. Because then you need a big department, and you should set some things like this, what you see, these companies, what do they do? This in native stuff, who build it like the Amazons, who building stuff for themselves, etc. Now, ERP is, for a while, too complicated to do everything, but at the other end, it's good enough. It's an administrative system. This mastering and scheduling and everything is still like we did 40 years ago. Now, decouple it. ERP never could have a good warehouse management solution because then the retail people downstream have another element. It's not have a good shop floor solution because it's too complicated if you look to it. Decouple that. Take only the upstream elements. And take them only vanilla, and maybe your vendor, what you have today, is maybe good enough. Or if this vendor is vanilla, tomorrow you can go to another vanilla vendor because they have more or less the same functionality.
Right.
But what I expect, what we now do already, we have a big breakthrough with reverse engineering, or from screens already with AI, we can generate already stuff. We are coming very close in a year time. If you see all these SAP or Oracle screens, automatically they give me content for creating source code. And we are very close. We are already very close to this one. What we do with Undoc, we did already proofs. I've seen it last week from my people in India already. We generate 70% already, only taking a demo from the internet. And with that, there is input, only the demo was already good for 70% of creating source coders elements. Now, there's coming amazing technology in AI. But the problem is, and we need help, how to implement that. And that is what we do not know. All our business people do not understand ERP, IT in the beginning, and there we have to commoditize them. And that is a process of ongoing improvement.
Right. Now, what do you think which customer profiles do you think are best suited for early adopters of this composable architecture?
At least the manufacturing companies, because because the retail companies are already further and they are already in, and they have already more AI. The manufacturing companies are extremely interesting. Take only your bill of material stuff and take that, and that means decouple it. Take your Infor is maybe my old bound product, still even one of the best on this moment. They had a bound shell and they were native already on the internet, if you look to it. Now, they were already with the same source code on the internet. Now, those companies are already good enough, but could be also an SAP what you have, take it, but reduce it. If you have now 2,000 users, don't make a contract for 2,000 users, bring it back to 500 users.
Right.
Then you have more enough. If you bring it back, if now you increase where it is not built for. It's not native built for the internet. It's not big data. It's not containerized. That means it's so old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Therefore, no, but old-fashioned is not bad for the car. That means if it's under the hood, Who cares?
Right.
But don't do it on your dashboard.
Right.
And what we see now, more the dashboard take it over. And AI is there. Therefore, be careful. Don't change too early, and never be afraid if they don't deliver you. Okay, you should not pay the maintenance. I did with Embraer, a big this builder of these airplanes. We rebuilt with BPM already 20 years ago, and they stopped the maintenance of SAP. Because if we don't need, it's not, if we change nothing, why should we pay maintenance? Because we have perpetual license, we have our perpetual license lifelong. And realize if you give up your perpetual license, you give a lot up.
Right. Right.
Most people are not aware of it, but your perpetual license are lifelong. You have the right to work lifelong with the product you bought.
Right. And that's
if nothing changed, no, why should you pay maintenance?
Well, and that's the frustration I have with the ERP and the enterprise tech space right now. Is you look at, for example, what SAP is doing with Rise. You know, they're telling customers that you have until 2027. Now they're kind enough to extend it to 2030. But they're basically saying you have to commit to Rise if we extend your maintenance and support to 2030. But you're already paying your maintenance, so it's
extremely stressful because they make everyone afraid, and the revenue increased tremendous. There's no implementation. It's nothing implemented. It's only they collect only the revenue, and it's 10 times market cap. That means their market cap increased tremendous, but they fall from the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Clayton Christensen if you go to the what we see these innovative design, what Clayton Christensen mentioned, to a certain point, like DEC, these companies they fall from the cliff.
Digital equipment, is that what you're talking about?
This is equipment, the same. If you look at, that's the investor's dilemma, the innovator's dilemma.
Right.
And the microservices were not good enough yet in this disruptive innovation for everything, but you have not to do everything, decouple it. Right. And we have these APIs to it, these REST APIs are so strong. We have so many strong elements. Now, and we should unite us with many of these independent learners, and they're smart, very smart people in the SAP camp who know so much in depth their business and their knowledge. Now, and then you need only a few guys. You don't need an army of 500 people. Right. You need only a few guys to understand this one.
Right. Now, here's an interesting question from Darian on LinkedIn, and I'll have to read you part of it because it cuts off. But Darian says, you talked about microservices enabling real-time adaptability with dynamic apps that are evergreen. Given how static traditional ERP systems are, do you think we'll see a future where enterprises completely abandon ERP as we know it, or will ERP simply evolve into a back-end transaction engine while microservices takes over the business process?
But it's more important. We have these self-driving cars, and to a certain point, there's like agentic AI. To a certain point, it's not self-driving, it's still a steering wheel. But the car is driving better than yourself, but under the hood, we have still the old stuff. There's still mechanical stuff in a Tesla car. Therefore, you can still, in these elements, you can have an ERP system, decouple it, and it's not, you're right, it's only a transaction element, it's so dead like it can be dead. And we talk then over, say, what we call digital stuff is nonsense. On the end, it's only PDF. There's no digital. There's nothing. On the end is a transactional system, and it's dying. The process is dying, and you take it by the end by a spreadsheet, and you continue further. Now, reduce that and accept that. That is statical, but in 1 second, we bring the statical SQL data in a big query from Google. Then immediately from there, it's dynamic, it's semantic. From here, I'm going in a semantic layer, and there we are evergreen stuff. We call it every young. With my S-bill of material, I can take every moment, the latest components. Now, and it's very simple, and it's a software factory. And we do it only with 250 engineers instead of thousands of people in Bernstein.
Right. Now, okay, so what I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment and pretend like I work for one of the big incumbent ERP vendors, and I say, okay, Jan, this all sounds great, but what about that single source of truth that customers want? What about the fully integrated solution? The way you're just
single, what we call there's two elements. It's end-to-end business processes and one version of the truth. But here, the single side of truth is only before the spreadsheet. And very early, you're dying. And all the CRM systems are already not integrated. And if you take Ariba, you have only one single sign of one version of the truth. Yes, one bill of material. You have one invoice from SAP, from Oracle. The only one version of the truth is you have one invoice. They can send you one invoice and everything is integrated. You can pay one bill, but it's nonsense. There is no single, and there's no one version of the truth, because we go now to the most end-to-end workflow process, and it's still dynamic, and it's still semantic, and still one version of the truth. Now, in this one version of the truth, after an MRP run, one of the data is maybe 1 day old. And on the latest moment, it's 1 millisecond before the transaction. Now, take care, in the downstream, all this Internet of Things elements can be integrated only on the latest moment. You need only 1 second. If you do it in the ERP, it's 1,000 times too complicated. This data should never be integrated there. Like the car, on the moment you drive the steering wheel, then you know what to do. Now, that is what we call late binding. You have 2 elements. One is decoupling, and in decoupling, you expect that some things are maybe a week old of data, but who cares? Once a year, maybe you need the financial elements for the stock for the government or so. I mean, and once a month you need some things. A lot of data you need only once of a month. Now, what you do then? You take microservice out, and you bring the consolidated elements once a month in. That's what we did with Vallejo. Vallejo had 40,000 SAP users, and we replaced their we replaced for 20,000 users their project control solution from Microsoft. We rebuilt it in 3 months. We replaced it, and we built in PeopleSoft. There were some things. We did it also with microservices, and we bring then the data back in the ERP system. Because we realize in ERP, you have the broken process, but what you do in Microsoft is not broken. You take it out, but you're not out forever. No, you're out and you bring it in. You bring the result back. That's the matter of fact. Most people do not understand this. If you most people say, hey, I leave the system. No, you're not leaving it. You take the data out, but the result once a month before you do your financial numbers, you bring it only once in the same process in SAP.
Right.
Now, there is a secret. That is a secret to understand this.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And one of the questions I want to ask you too is how do you see the balance shifting between best of breed applications or composable or composable technology and fully integrated ERP suites? How do you see those two worlds colliding?
Fully ERP is not element enterprise resource problems. And what means that what is ERP is too big? It never became enterprise. Even I dealt with Philips, these guys, they had even 60 instances of SAP. Now, what means then there is even in Boeing, we had 40,000 people on one instance. That was unique in the world. But in Vallejo, many people have 50 instances. Now, what is then best of breed? What is all this nonsense? It's all nonsense. You are misleaded. And why is it? You have dear customer, can I buy for you? No, you have to buy. That means you are afraid. We are so afraid. Now, and on average, the CIOs do not understand the business knowledge. And that's a core element. Aligning IT and business is a crucial part. And this containerized stuff can become in the camp of the business.
Right. Now, can you tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit more about Rapid, if you don't mind. What is the Rapid tool? How does it work? What are some of the use cases about work?
Yeah, we started. I started with a lot. I had a third of the shares in WebEx, and with WebEx we came to the conclusion with the 2 WebEx owners. We built a BPM solution, and in BPM we had end-to-end processes. And Subramin, the founders of WebEx, say, Jan, you are the only one who can bring end-to-end processes, and we have web meetings. Can we not connect them together as a war room? And then you build microservice on it. We did it already 15 years ago, and we call it the Process Factory. Now, that is what I took in Rapid over. I rebuilt it again, and Chorus became part of open text, and they were not so much involved what we did in this part. And I took it for the third time over. I rebuilt everything in microservices, and this is composable apps. That is what we're having. And what we did in Chorus, we built everything therein. But in Baan, we had already a generator. We generated the Baan shell, and I learned that. Now, what we learn now, if you have Mendix out systems, you have a runtime version and you're locked in. And we should not do this. We should generate. Now, what we did, we built a generator to generate Java code from business. And in most times, we can generate 80% already in an afternoon direct. And we can do it direct with the business owners. And then we generate it in plain Java. And we do it no longer in PaaS, that is in platform as a service, the infancy of the internet. I throw everything away at my knowledge, and I start again and adopted Google. Now, I cannot do 90% more. All those DevOps are all related in this, what we call this rapid stuff. It means in this factory, these guys are in half a day, they do more than in 20 days before. And most is generated, but the last mile can be built in Java. And the Java developers don't like low code, because then you are locked in. And on the end, you need still, and Java is one of the most best knowledge for the internet using this one, etc. You generate everything, and from Java you can go to Python. You can combine immediately this stuff to do it. You generate Java, you do the Python stuff yourself, and there are very simple languages. But we increase the productivity of a Java programmer at least by 4 times. And that means we make the Java programmer more productive. And the Java program, and we have then no code, the 2 elements. We have rapid 2 elements. One is rapid developer, is generating Java code. And one is the composer element. There is no code. And there you do it in only on the workflow elements, and are totally united together. And you do it there on the workflow element only for business, for a citizen.
Right.
And there you bring the most of your AI, is the best place to bring it there. Because it's simple. You have not to ask the IT guy, help me a little to do some things. Here, it's like you did in the past with a spreadsheet. If you could handle your spreadsheet, it's good enough to work with this no code.
Right. Now, how does this differ from some of the I'll pick on Odoo for a moment. Odoo is an ERP system, but it's somewhat composable, modular. How is that different?
It's not composable. If you Pega, it's built in a modern tool set, but it's more built still in the infancy of the internet. It's still a transactional system.
Right.
But much more simpler. It's good enough, maybe, and much more simple. If you look to the functionality, and then with microservice together, they like it, not to say, but it could be a very good combination, Odoo and microservices. Because then Odoo could be a good replacement of SAP or Oracle. Because in many, it's good enough. You have the source code, costs you nothing. Only 400K or so a month or so per user. It's simple. It means and it's still used everywhere. I like the way they do it with my neighbors from Belgium. We speak the same language a little. But it's coming from Europe. Sometimes we bring good stuff there in. That is more new, but it's not the dynamic part of the microservices. But it's very more easier to do to replace the ERP stuff, in my opinion. Right. Maybe we should combine. Maybe with my neighbor, the combination could be a good one.
Yeah, Odoo with Rapid, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
that makes sense. Well,
I respect them very much the way they do. They simplify a lot of stuff. Much simpler to implement.
Yeah. And I think the complication, where there are complications or where there's limitations of a standard system like an Odoo or any system, that's where.
Yeah, but Eric, I think you realize they do not the masterwork scheduling stuff, etc. They do more project or more Kanban project oriented stuff, I should say.
Yeah.
That means they have chosen and take care. There's not a full ERP stuff.
Right.
I mean, if you go to the whole, if you have a manufacturing company with building aeroplanes and building all this and have thousands of parts, etc., and where you do your masterwork and scheduling, your MRP run, etc. Who is doing an MRP run? Many people talking manufacturing companies without understanding MRP.
Right.
but the complexity is in the MRP, master work and scheduling element, and then all the logistic. And if you see all those logistics elements running it every day and how to deal with it stuff.
Right. Here's a question that just came in. I think it's a good one that's worth noting. This is from Vast CNC on YouTube. Vast CNC says, "I'm late to the party, but very interested in this approach. Where can we find more about Rapid?" My
Oh
Google
yeah, I will send you my email. That means Erik will also. If you go Jan Baan, and if you go to my LinkedIn stuff, and even I can give a lecture to you if you like it, because I have to be retired. My 3 sons are running it. I have not so much to say. Only once a year on behalf of the family, we are the only shareholders. But I have time. There also I support Erik a little to do this stuff, and I can lecture you a little to do this. It's very easy, and there's a lot of I'm writing now my new book, but if you go to our webpage, there's a lot of information what you can see in Rapid.
Yeah, and just be sure you're Googling not Rapid, RAPID, but Rapid, so RAPPIT.
Like the app is in a rapid way, app is IT. And my grandson is even running it here in also the UX part by us, but he came with a name. We call it a good name. First it was Vanenburg. But Rapid, where you do it in a rapid way, as an app, as an IT, an application.
Yep. So go to RAPPIT. That's how you spell it, and you'll find it the website as well. Here's an interesting question from Jason on LinkedIn. What's become the greatest risks of adopting a composable ERP versus traditional ERP? In other words, what are those trade-offs that we should be aware of?
Take care a little. If you take a best of breed, then you should understand a little the architectural elements. But always you should understand the architectural elements, because you are more complicated if you say you delegate all the architectural elements in a monolithic system. But it's worthwhile to understand your architectural elements, or take a good service that could be an independent also vendor who can help you a little. And it's not complicated, but to understand that. And then the scalability is much better. And take the infrastructure as a service element. Could be Amazon, could be Microsoft, but I prefer Google, because Google is very strong on the data elements and all the DevOps, etc. And it is so easy. You need no longer 5 architects. The architects are productized in the microservices. You need only one person, and the core element in the future, the most, is the data analyst who understand it, and they should report directly, in my opinion, to the CEO. And the architectural data analytics elements linking to AI is becoming the future. It's becoming the most important one, in my opinion.
Right. So what about just as a way to sort of bring this all full circle and complete the conversation here? What advice would you give to companies that are considering a move towards composable ERP, and where should they start, especially if they're a company that's used to or accustomed to being locked in by a big ERP vendor, or they just have a mindset of a big monolithic ERP? How can they start making a step towards exploring composable ERP?
The best is, there's many people, best is try to find some people understand SAP, Infor, etc. Understand a good integrated guy, an individual, independent guy who's maybe working in the SAP world, etc. so far, but they are isolated. The SAP brings no money to them, but they understand. You need a guy who understands the ERP world, and they can help you. A little older guy could help you, and with a young kid understanding his microservices, you can do a lot. And it's not complicated. It's very simple. I understand this stuff. I'm not. It's not rocket science. Right. It's simple, and you inside you should understand it, because now you're locked in. That gives you a freedom, and you immediately will increase tremendous your EBITDA. There's no investment involved if you do it well, because do it not in a big bang way. You do it is no risk. You do it step by step. First you take what it is, and then you every time sunset a little. Don't go to big implementation elements. There's no reason for it. Do it step by step, reduce it, and then if you take something new, take care that you only take vanilla. Everything you should do more is so dangerous, because then with vanilla you are limited, locked in.
Right.
And then you share the whole generic one, who is proven by thousands of customers. and you destroy it with you do customization. You have no attention. You do it yourself. You mislead it, and you do it with wrong technology. You with the technology from the last century.
Right.
And you should do it here. You should do it with the most newest technology. If you do it in BAPI type of technology, that's stupid what you can do. Because you take for your customization where the human is involved. You go customization is done for the downstream, for the workflow, and not for the upstream. And you destroy it because you bring it in the upstream and you're more locked in. And AI is the same. Never do AI in the ERP part. There's no reason for it. The later, the better. And by the way, Eric, I will let time. If missing time, now we can do it another time. We can do a second part of this version. But anyway, up to you.
Yeah, I think we should do a deeper dive into this at some point. But and you're always a fascinating person to speak with, and I have so many questions, and I know the audience does too. So many questions I didn't get to in the interest of time. But one thing I do have to ask before we go is, and it just occurred to me as we were talking here today. I didn't plan to ask you this, but what do you think from a change management perspective? When you think about big monolithic ERP systems, part of the problem and part of the risk is that you're forcing your organization into sort of a shock to have to adapt to however the software works. Whereas microservices, it seems like, would be a little bit more enabled.
Say what you do with microservices is what you do now already. You replace only your document management type of stuff on this moment. Become familiar and rebuild only and maybe if you look, even if you see with all this email type of stuff now, replace this. And if you look to Microsoft Office, it's like something from and SharePoint. Why should you continue too much there? Rebuild your own microservice and do it there, because why should you need email in the future and deal all this stuff? I mean, on this part you start. And then you say, "Ooh, wow, I see now." And then you take the APIs and you take as is. That means you're destroying nothing in the beginning. And start with some small elements like a leaf element, or and take this simple downstream elements as an integrated dynamic app, instead of doing some things like document management and this type of stuff. And then you adopt the data. Then you learn the data and take care that you should understand your data stream from your MRP. You kill nothing, and then you say, "Oh, I can do it half the users." If you take you do all those stuff more in the document and all this stuff in the ERP stuff. Decouple that. See ERP only as a pipe, as a data pipe. And then you see step by step, why should you not build another shop floor control model? But ERP should stay forever there. Your financials can stay there. All the compliance, let it stay. No risk. And now you go to a new version, it's 100 times more risk. You go from Rise anywhere and you go to HANA, and that is the biggest risk. That is there you take the risk.
Well, that's why 60% of SAP customers have not started and have no plans to move to.
And the money is already in the market cap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's I think this model you're talking about, I think in my opinion, the biggest challenge in getting widespread mainstream adoption of this microservices and composable concept is all the money that's at stake with these big incumbent tech providers. So I think it's important to really keep an open mind and get in.
And everyone like to come around you, because all the complication stuff is there. Now, if you bring it down, do the same element like you did 3 years ago. There is nothing to win. You win only downstream. Your money is downstream. Never upstream. Upstream is only the compliance. It's like a bookkeeping system. Now, take care. Now, your inventory is there. But why not taking your new stuff on top of your inventory, make some new stuff, like a little warehouse management. And it's not rocket science. You do it in the afternoon. And start. But crucial part is, the big value is if you can have these two pipes, these data streams. If you can have this transactional data element from an SQL database, if you can pick it up in BigQuery with AI, boy, now there is the money. The money is not in the downstream. And downstream, and even why should you pay the maintenance? But okay, maybe you are afraid, but there's a lot to win even. Yeah, you have even don't give up your perpetual license.
Right.
You
Right.
give you gold, it's out, and then no, they milk you more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Well,
realize, and if you go to a new system, at least you should expect that you do it with half of the users, or maybe 20% of the users.
right.
And then it's good enough. Then you take the core element, can go for another 5 or 10 years. Maybe you say, okay, the way I do my inventory and the way I do my purchase stuff. But then you go say, why not procure to pay? You take it immediately out. The most attractive element, procure to pay and order to cash, are dynamic elements with consumers outside. Never should do an ERP. And it's extremely simple process. In Rapid, we do it very, very easy. We built very simple procure to pay type of elements. There you have a lot of money already if you bring it in. All
Right.
this, we undock, we take all the documents in a dynamic way. Every document automatically for 90% immediately become a dynamic document. You take it already out, and then see like a procure to pay, order to cash. This type of elements are where you make a lot of money, and then you learn to deal with the same data. Now your data is not integrated. Your transaction data is dying. And it's not, and you feel it with a spreadsheet, so stupid like you can do in every boardroom. It's gambling, because they need first a spreadsheet to explain some things, and it's not reality. No, here we go to dynamic decisions. It must be semantic, and that is what microservices are doing us.
Right.
And it's extremely simple.
Yeah. Sounds simple. I mean, it sounds simple enough. I think if we can get out of our own way in the industry and be open to other ideas and not just hone in on these old school models, I think it's a good thing to
And
consider.
then we have another element. Then the vendors are forced, otherwise they make no money, to make their APIs or even the connectivity better. Otherwise, they're in business for them.
Yeah.
We should force them. Now, I can take everything out. We are professionals to bring it out. But at the other end, they should even have to make it more open. But now they close everything. Even in the healthcare, it's more a dramatic element. If you look to these terrible healthcare systems, because all the compliance are still even therein. They misused everything, and therefore they make too much money from the legacy old-fashioned stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Makes
mentioned
total
yesterday a little. Now, I'm born in ERP. I built ERP, but I'm little bit you said yesterday, I heard from you, you hate ERP. Now, I hate ERP and I like it. It's more or less the same. Now,
Yeah.
ERP still, it's nice to understand it, but do it then step by step in the new way.
Yes. Yeah, I think the video I published the other day was I hate ERP systems, but I think it's a more appropriate title would be I hate what ERP systems have become, because I think they're becoming a more of a problem and a nuisance in the industry in some cases. Well, I appreciate your time here today, Jan. And one thing I do want to share with the audience here is if you're interested in more digital transformation trends and just things to be aware of as you're defining your digital strategy, check out this QR code right here. This is our annual digital transformation report. If you scan this QR code, you can read that for free on our website. You can learn more about some of the trends in the industry. You can read independent reviews and rankings of different technologies in the space, as well as implementation best practices to be successful in your digital transformation.
And I have an initiative for you. And it could be, suppose that some people are interested. No, I can you can arrange it very simple to do maybe a lecture with 20 people or some things, or could be different. And for me, it can be free of choice. That means I made my money already. That means I have something to do. Otherwise, my wife is punishing me when I'm stay to us. She's the boss at home, staying to us there. But that is in an easy way. We all learn from it. Who knows? And there's so much to win, and if you can arrange some things, Eric, you have all the facilities for that to do this stuff.
It's a great idea. If you're willing to do it, I'd love to do that. Maybe a follow-up, sort of a mastermind with a smaller group of people. We could sort of dive into it a little bit more detail. It's a great idea. I love it.
All right. Great conversation with Jan Bond. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed facilitating it. And hopefully that gives you some ideas on whether or not composable ERP might be something you consider or might be a good fit for your organization and the digital strategy you're pursuing. Still a lot more to cover in this episode. We're going to take a quick break. We still have to get into our evaluation and comparison of SAP S/4HANA versus Oracle Fusion ERP versus Microsoft Dynamics 365. We are going to get into the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. And then last but not least, we're going to get into the 4 digital strategies that you should be aware of and considering as you define your digital strategy. And hopefully that gives you a framework to determine which path makes the most sense for you, so you focus your efforts and aren't getting into analysis paralysis or evaluating different types of technologies that just aren't going to make sense for you. So it's really a way for you to have that sort of high level roadmap of where you want to start. So we've got a lot more to cover. We're going to get into all that here when we come back from a quick break. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. People oftentimes ask me how I built such a strong social media following on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and other outlets. And the fact of the matter is it took me a long time to build a following through a lot of trial and error, making a lot of mistakes. Had I known that there were companies out there that could help me build my brand, I would have done that a long time ago. I didn't know that, but the good news is that there is today a consulting firm that will help you through building your own personal brand through some of their training programs. The company is called Roloff Consulting, and if you're familiar with Emma Roloff, she's someone that I've had on this podcast before, and she's well known in the digital transformation space as well as the sales space, and she's big on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And she and her husband have started a training course and a training company that focuses on helping people build their personal brands and helping them to sell themselves digitally. So whether you're a salesperson that's trying to reach more customers, or you're an individual that's just trying to build your personal brand, that's something that they help with through their training programs. And they've offered listeners of this podcast a free 5-day LinkedIn challenge. And I encourage you to check it out. I've included a link below for this podcast. If you go to the podcast notes, you'll find a link that gets you free access to this 5-day challenge, where you'll get step-by-step guidance. You'll get real results. So you'll get some tangible results from the program. And you also get a special offer at the end of it. So it's exclusive to listeners of this podcast. Be sure to check out the link below if you want to work on building your personal brand, or if you're in sales and you're trying to reach more people. Whatever the case may be, check it out. It's free to listeners of this podcast. You can check it out via the link below.
Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Viva, mirror, my sword and shield. My missionaries in a foreign field.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. We help with digital strategy, software selection, implementation planning, as well as the implementation themselves. So one of the key things to think about as you're defining your digital strategy or roadmap is which type of ERP system might you consider. We talked about composable ERP earlier, and how composable ERP options are becoming increasingly popular, increasingly common, and increasingly viable for organizations that might want to move away from a big monolithic ERP system. Having said that, though, a lot of organizations out there still want one of the big monolithic ERP providers. There's still a place for them. There's still a role for them, and there will be for quite some time. And one of the big questions organizations have oftentimes is which ERP system is going to be the best for us, particularly if we're a larger organization. And one of the, three of the most common ERP systems that companies tend to evaluate are SAP S/4HANA, Oracle Fusion ERP, and Microsoft Dynamics 365. So with all that in mind, I created a YouTube video not too long ago where I compare objectively and from a tech agnostic perspective, how these three systems compare to one another, what the strengths and weaknesses are. Really is a way to give you a sense of what system might be the best for your organization if you are in fact considering one of the big ERP systems. So with that all being said, let's roll the clip here of the comparison, the independent comparison of SAP versus Oracle versus Microsoft. First thing to look at when considering these three systems and when comparing them to one another is to understand the maturity of the products. And what I mean by maturity is the technical and functional maturity. One thing to keep in mind with all three of these systems is that they simply aren't as mature as their legacy on-premise counterparts. So for example, those that are used to or are familiar with SAP ECC or Microsoft Dynamics AX or Oracle EBS will find that these newer versions of the cloud solutions that these three vendors are providing are simply not as mature in terms of functional and technical capabilities. So in other words, there's a lot of functionality that was available in the on-premise systems, but they're not yet available in the cloud flagship products that are being offered today. So that's the first thing to look at is when you're evaluating the systems, look at the maturity, not just does a system have a certain functionality and a certain capability, but how deep is that capability? How robust is it? How flexible is it? And I'm actually going to come back to this point here in a second. But in general, you want to take a look at the maturity of the systems and understand where the strengths and weaknesses are. And for what it's worth, as a generalization, when we look at these three systems and compare the maturity of the three systems, just as a generalization, we find that Oracle Cloud is generally more mature and more developed and more robust than SAP S/4HANA and Microsoft D365. Now, obviously, this depends on what your specific requirements and needs are, but when we look across all of our clients and the evaluations we've done, we find that Oracle just has more capability and is further along in their journeys. And part of this could be because Oracle created Oracle Fusion about a decade ago, well before SAP was working on S/4HANA or before Microsoft released D365. So they've simply had more time and more R&D to put into their cloud solution. So you do want to look at your specific requirements and your specific needs and look at the maturity of the product against those needs. But in general, we find that Oracle has a leg up over the other two systems in that regard. The next thing to look at is how scalable are these two products? And a lot of this is going to depend on what does scalability mean to you. For some organizations, scalability equates to high efficiency, standard processes, common business processes, and repeatable processes. Other organizations might define scale as flexibility, and I'm actually going to come back to the flexibility point here in a moment. But if your definition of scalability is the ability to have common business processes and to drive a common operating model, then SAP S/4HANA actually has more of a leg up compared to the other two systems. Oracle and Microsoft Dynamics both are a bit more flexible and can do more things, I guess I would say, in terms of the ability to change the software and the systems. But SAP, in terms of driving a common set of business processes, a common architecture, a common platform, SAP generally is stronger in that area of scalability. But again, it all depends on what your definition of scalability is and making sure that you assess these three systems against that criteria. Now, the next thing you want to look at is the flexibility of the technology. If you're a high growth organization or you're rapidly changing, entering new markets, acquiring new customers, maybe even acquiring new companies, then flexibility may be very important to you. And you want to know that you're selecting and implementing a solution that can keep up with you and that can change as your business changes. And this is where both Oracle and Microsoft Dynamics tend to have a leg up over SAP in terms of flexibility. Both products are a bit more adaptable and adjustable when you look at some of the different workflows and processes within the systems. So I'd say one of those two systems are probably going to give you an advantage if you're looking for or valuing flexibility. S/4HANA does have some flexibility. It's definitely more flexible than R3 was, or in some cases even ECC. But in general, when compared to Oracle and Microsoft, we find that those two solutions are more flexible. So the key here, though, is to look at where you value flexibility, what business processes will you require flexibility, and then assess the products against those criteria. And then another area of flexibility that may or may not be important to you is within the hosting options that you have. So for example, SAP provides multiple hosting options you can deploy in the cloud, and so they give you options, whereas Oracle and Microsoft are both pushing very aggressively to force people into the cloud, which may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what your needs are. So really understanding those areas of flexibility, what your priorities are, and assessing those three systems against those criteria are going to be important. Now, the next thing to consider with these three systems, and probably the most obvious one, is the level of general functionality that the three systems provide. And this is completely dependent on what your needs and priorities are. If your priorities are really strong financials and GL and accounts payable, accounts receivable, SAP may be the best fit. And oftentimes we find clients that will value that functionality heavier with SAP than with other systems that they might be considering. If, on the other hand, you're looking for very solid workflows and enterprise performance management and data and analytics, Oracle Cloud is extremely strong in that area. Or if CRM is a very important priority to your organization, many of our clients that value CRM find that Microsoft is stronger in that area. So you really want to look at what are your priorities, what are your requirements, and then look at each of the different parts of these three systems against those specific functional requirements. And one other thing I would note here is as you're evaluating the functionality of the three systems, it's important not just to rely on demos and what the salespeople might tell you or what you might see in a proposal, but to get quantitative, objective inputs as to where the strengths and weaknesses are and how the three systems compare. For example, we have an internal database that tracks thousands, tens of thousands of requirements for all three systems as well as other ERP systems, completely agnostic data that can be a good way to augment the information you might get directly from the vendor. But regardless of how you do it, make sure that you're comparing the functionality in the areas that are most important to you as an organization. And one last thing on this front is make sure you're poking holes in the systems. Even if you're leaning pretty heavily towards one of these three systems, you want to make sure you understand where the gaps are, where the weaknesses, where are the shortcomings of the product. And every one of these three systems, as well as every other system in the marketplace, by the way, is going to have shortcomings and weaknesses. And if you haven't identified what those are yet, then you probably haven't dug deep enough into the evaluation. And the reason this is so important is to not only give you more confidence in the decision to make sure that you're finding the weaknesses in all three systems, but also so you can better plan for and understand what the risks of implementation are so you can have a more realistic implementation plan and budget. So in addition to assessing which systems have the best capabilities and the strongest functionality, you also want to poke holes in the systems to understand where the weaknesses are as well. Even though all three of these systems are largely deployed in the cloud, it's important to understand the level of maintenance that's going to be required by you as an organization. And what I mean by that is the technology maintenance for the most part, and also the business user maintenance of the system. So on the technology side, you want to understand what sorts of skills and competencies am I going to need from my IT department to support this product going forward, and how does that compare to what I have now? And similarly, what sort of business competencies and business user types of competencies am I going to need to have to ensure that we can maintain the system longer term from a business perspective? So really understanding both aspects of maintenance, what the ongoing cost might be, how well it aligns with where you are today, and to the extent that it doesn't align with where you are today, understanding what that gap is and what the costs and risks of getting to that point are. So really look into what are those maintenance requirements and which one best fits your needs. Now, an intangible evaluation criteria that a lot of organizations don't think about is what kind of impact is this product, whichever one you choose of the three, what kind of impact would that option have on your organization? And in particular, how would it affect the culture of your organization? So, for example, if you're an entrepreneurial organization, you've grown very quickly through acquisitions and just organic growth, perhaps you have private equity funding now, and you're really trying to get to the next level by creating a more common business model and common operating processes and that sort of thing, then SAP may be able to drive that sort of cultural impact on your organization. If, on the other hand, you're trying to create more flexibility and create a more nimble and more agile organization, if that's where you're trying to go, then Oracle or Microsoft might be the better fit from that regard. So really understand that intangible art versus science aspect of how the technology fits with your current culture, and more importantly, where you want to head as a culture as you look to transform your business to get you to the next level. Now, last but not least, you want to understand what your system integrator options are. What sort of implementation support would you have if you chose any one of these three systems? And how do those implementation options compare to one another? With all things being equal, you definitely want to look at how the implementation partner could make or break your potential implementation. So if, for example, you find that Oracle and Microsoft are both pretty good, they're pretty equal fits with your other needs that we've identified in this video, then it may come down to what implementation partner do you feel most comfortable with. And just as a broad generalization, we find that SAP has a number of very large implementers that might be good fits for larger organizations, but they also have mid-tier types of providers that people don't often think about that might actually be better fits. Same goes for Oracle and Microsoft as well. And one other note I'll throw into here as you're comparing these three systems is if I were to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of these three channels and ecosystems in general, the SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft channels and ecosystems, I would say Microsoft is actually at a severe disadvantage. There's a lot of VARs and resellers out there that aren't very well regulated, for lack of a better word, by Microsoft, and it's just very fragmented. So there's almost too many options to choose from, and not all of them are very good. Some of them are good, some of them are very bad, and there's a lot of in between, a lot of mediocre options. So very fragmented space, very hard to navigate. But if you can find a good one and you find that the product's a good fit, it can obviously be a good fit for your organization. And then with SAP and Oracle, I think the biggest challenge there is to not become too enamored by the big name implementers, because unless you're a very large organization that absolutely insists on and has great experience working with these very large system integrators, oftentimes that can be overkill for a lot of organizations by spending too much time and money and too much complexity in the implementation. So make sure that you carefully consider the implementer options you have that are best aligned for you, and use that as one of your decision criteria as well. So that was my comparison of SAP versus Oracle versus Microsoft. If you have questions, you drop those in the comments and I'll keep an eye on those and be happy to answer any questions you have about how those three systems compare. But hopefully that gives you a good sense of what to expect from each of those three systems. If you'd like to learn more about those ERP systems and other ERP systems that are out there in the marketplace, I encourage you to download our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. And that's a report we publish each year. It has a number of independent software reviews and rankings that'll help you not only compare SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft, but also many of the other systems that are out there in the marketplace. Be sure to check that out. There's a QR code on the screen in front of you, and you can go to the links below as well if you'd like to download that 2025 Digital Transformation Report. So be sure to check that out. So speaking of ERP systems, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk about the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. So we talked about SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. We're going to talk a little bit about them again, as well as 7 other systems out there that you should be considering as it relates to AI capabilities. So if you're interested in ERP and AI together, this is a top 10 list you'll want to pay close attention to. So we'll take a quick break. We'll get into the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies, and then later we'll get back to the 4 strategies, digital strategies you should be considering as part of your overall roadmap, and really helping you hone in on which one's best for you. So we've got a lot more to cover. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
I want to invite you to join me and other thought leaders in the digital transformation space to Stratosphere 2025. It's an annual conference we've hosted now for 7 years in a row. It's a great event. It's live in Denver, Colorado, but we're also offering it virtually via hybrid tickets. And we're going to have a lot of different speakers here, including myself as a keynote, as well as others that you may know from the industry. And this is a perfect conference if you're interested in any sort of digital transformation, including ERP and CRM and HCM. And actually the theme for this year's session is AI and how AI is affecting all different types of digital transformation. But in addition to AI, we'll also talk about the fundamentals of digital transformation, including program management, evaluating the right software, digital strategy, change management, process improvement, all the things you need to know to make your project successful. It's also a great way to network and learn from others. So just being part of a community that is also like-minded and going through the same things you are, that's another value. And you can join, like I said, remotely, in person, and you can also buy VIP tickets if you'd like more exclusive access to me and others from the Third Stage team and other speakers that are going to be there. So I hope to see you soon. Check out my discount code below for discounted tickets. You can go to stratosphere2025.com for more information, including the full agenda, and I hope to see you there.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
I'm gonna leave it all out there and I'm gonna leave it all out there.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And I wanted to share this YouTube video with you that I published recently where I talk about the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. And this is particularly helpful if you're looking as part of your digital strategy at enterprise technologies, commercial off-the-shelf software that also contains a lot of AI capabilities. So we've taken a first stab at ranking some of these AI-enabled enterprise technologies to give you a sense of which ones might be best for your organization or which one you might want to consider for your organization. So with that all being said, let's roll the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Odoo is one of the more popular up-and-coming ERP systems, especially in the small and mid-market. And Odoo is an open source provider of ERP technology, and they've invested fairly heavily in AI. And what I like about Odoo's use of AI is that it's bringing AI to small and mid-sized companies. So we think of things like order processing and closing the books and other basic functions that Odoo can handle as an enterprise software provider. They've invested heavily in AI, and they're automating a lot of those processes using AI. So it's a great option for you, especially if you're a small and mid-market company. And in fact, if you are a small and mid-market company, you might actually want to rank Odoo higher on your list. But with all that being said, that's enough to land Odoo at number 10 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 9 of our top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is a product called Rapid. And Rapid is actually a low-code software provider that's not really a traditional ERP provider in the way we may have thought about it historically. Instead, what Rapid focuses on is composable ERP. So it's microservices and really breaking down ERP technologies into smaller subsets and providing an integration and AI platform to pull together multiple technologies. So this can be a great option, especially if you are not looking to necessarily rip out your back office ERP systems and you want to preserve some of the legacy systems you have, but you still want to take advantage of some of the AI capabilities of other software providers. Rapid might be a good option for you. Now, a couple other things to note about Rapid. One is the company was founded by Jan Bond, who, if you watch any of my content, you know that he's the founder of Bond Software. So he helped create the ERP software category as we know it today. And with this company, Rapid, I feel as though he's intentionally trying to destroy the monolithic ERP software industry that he helped pioneer, which I find very interesting. Rapid is one that's a relatively new challenger in the ERP in enterprise tech space, but I think in years to come, you'll see Rapid move up our top 10 list of AI-enabled technologies. But in the meantime, with that being said, that's enough to land Rapid at number 9 on our list. Coming in at number 8 is a company called ServiceNow. ServiceNow is not a traditional ERP system or a complete ERP system in the same way some of the others in our top 10 list are, but ServiceNow is used by a lot of customer-facing processes and organizations. So it's used often for customer service and creating cases and tickets with customers. It's also used by a lot of larger internal IT departments. So when IT departments try to track their help desk tickets, ServiceNow is oftentimes the platform that's used for that. And ServiceNow is really a good product to leverage AI capabilities just simply because of the mass amounts of data that it captures at the customer level. So they've built learned language models that are specific to HR, IT service management, and other functions. So they're also out acquiring AI providers as well and organically creating a lot of AI capabilities. So all that's enough to land ServiceNow at number 8 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 7 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies is Oracle NetSuite. And Oracle NetSuite is actually one of the top contenders in the small and mid-market, much like Odoo that we talked about earlier in this video. But one thing I like about NetSuite in its AI capabilities is not just the fact that they're developing these AI capabilities that can help with financial closes, customer order processing, supply chain, cash flow forecasting, and other functions, is the fact that NetSuite is a native cloud and SaaS solution, which really lends itself well to the use of AI and the adoption of AI. A lot of these legacy systems that are in our top 10 list weren't built for the cloud. So in some cases, these companies have not yet migrated their full set of capabilities over to the cloud, but NetSuite has always been in the cloud. So they have the maturity of a product that can really support and be supported by AI capabilities. So with all that being said, Oracle NetSuite lands at number 7 in our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in number 6 of our top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Workday. And Workday is not a complete ERP system on its own. It handles a lot within the world of human capital management, financials, and some basic inventory management, but not the full suite of ERP capabilities that a lot of ERP vendors provide. But Workday is investing very heavily in AI capabilities within those areas that it competes. So for example, when it comes to talent acquisition, Workday has embedded AI and created some predictive talent acquisition capabilities, which is very interesting, and even bringing AI to the HR function, which isn't something you always think about as a common use case for AI, but it is something that Workday is focused on. Workday has also invested in AI capabilities on the financial side of things when it comes to financial forecasting and planning, the financial close process, et cetera. They've really invested heavily in some AI capabilities there as well. So Workday could be a great option for those of you that might be focusing on technology that's going to enable a process and finance-driven type of organization or focus within your digital transformation. So all that is enough to land Workday at number 6 in our top 10 list of AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 5 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Oracle Cloud ERP. And actually, to be clear, it's not just Oracle Cloud ERP. It also includes Oracle Cloud Supply Chain Management and Human Capital Management. Those two functions fit within the umbrella of ERP. But Oracle has invested heavily in AI in all 3 areas. And where Oracle has an advantage is, first of all, they have a large client base, and they're well established in the ERP space. So that customer base provides a high volume of data to train AI models and to provide better AI capabilities to its customer base. So Oracle has embedded Oracle Fusion AI within all of its cloud applications as cloud products. Oracle also has the advantage of having industry focus across different industry verticals, so AI is able to leverage and learn from all these different industry capabilities that Oracle plays in. So all of that is enough to land Oracle Cloud ERP at number 5 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 4 on our list of AI-enabled ERP systems is Microsoft Dynamics 365, more specifically, Microsoft D365 with Copilot. And Microsoft has a distinct advantage in the AI arms race because they're an investor and part owner of OpenAI, and they also have Copilot, which draws from the OpenAI model. So that's really powerful in that most people that are using Microsoft Dynamics 365, and even people that are just using Microsoft Office 365, have access to Copilot, which is a very powerful AI tool set. Within Microsoft Dynamics 365, however, its AI tools are used to automate certain functions within supply chain management, financial close and reporting, and CRM as well. Copilot is also embedded within a number of different workflows within Dynamics 365, allowing customers a lot of flexibility to how they use AI within their business processes. So all that is enough to land Microsoft Dynamics 365 at number 4 on our list of the top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 3 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is Salesforce. Now, Salesforce may not be your traditional ERP system. Most people think of Salesforce as a CRM-only solution, but within Salesforce, you also have other third-party applications that can round out that CRM offering and provide more of an ERP-like experience. And this is done through the Force platform. But the reason I like Salesforce and the reason it's ranked high on our list is because they've embedded AI throughout so many different parts of their product using Einstein AI, which is their AI model that they've embedded within Salesforce. So where Salesforce is particularly strong as it relates to AI is within customer service, marketing, and the sales processes. So Salesforce has AI that are deeply embedded throughout workflows, throughout the product. It's not an add-on. Even though there's a separate product called Einstein, it's actually embedded throughout much of the Salesforce product. So all that is enough to land Salesforce at number 3 on our top 10 list of AI-enabled enterprise technologies. Coming in at number 2 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems is SAP S/4HANA. And not too long ago, S/4HANA rolled out its AI companion called Joule. And the unique thing about Joule is not only is it embedded in the various processes and workflow across supply chain management, manufacturing, and financials and other areas of strength within S/4HANA, but it's also a conversational AI tool, which is very powerful for the average end user who may not want to learn all the different transactions and menus that SAP is accustomed for. SAP is such a big, massive system, it's oftentimes easy to get lost in the details of where to find certain information or how to complete certain transactions. So Joule is a great way for the average person to be able to converse with SAP rather than looking for information within SAP. So Joule is a very powerful tool in that regard. The other way that SAP has a distinct advantage in the AI arms race is that they have such a big customer base, over 30,000 customers that have already opted into sharing the results with Joule and with the SAP AI models, to where customers are learning from each other, or their AI models are learning from one another. So that gives SAP a distinct advantage when you think about some of these big, massive companies that are starting to deploy S/4HANA along with AI. So all of that is enough to land SAP at number 2 on our list of top 10 AI-enabled ERP systems. Coming in at number 1 of our top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies is a product that is not an ERP system at all. It's a product called Palantir. And Palantir is a product that takes other systems and ties them together and creates customized workflows, AI, reporting, and other things that allow you to get the benefit of new technology without necessarily having to rip out and replace all of your legacy systems. So Palantir is something that's very commonly used, especially in government, healthcare, and even some manufacturing now. They're moving more into the private sector as well. And they really specialize in companies that have tons of data they've accumulated over the years, but they're using older technologies that they just haven't been able to replace or haven't had the appetite to replace. And so what Palantir has done is they've created a tool set that sort of sits on top of a lot of those legacy systems and gives you AI capabilities and integrations and workflows that make it feel like you've got new technology, but beneath the surface, you're still using a lot of the old legacy technologies, which might be okay depending on what technology you're referring to. Palantir has invested heavily in AI for data modeling, integration, and even predictive analytics and other types of AI-enabled processes that span across multiple functions and industries. So all that is enough to land Palantir at number 1 of our top 10 AI-enabled enterprise technologies. So that's an overview of the top 10 ranking of the enterprise technologies that have the best AI features within them, at least according to us, our opinion, and what we've seen so far with helping clients select and implement these different systems. But I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. If you've got any additions or comments or observations about any of these systems or systems that should have been in the top 10 or you think should have been in the top 10 but weren't, Would love to hear your feedback on any experience you have with AI in these different enterprise technologies. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to share with you one more video where I talk about how to define the general roadmap or strategy that makes the most sense for you, how to look at those 4 major paths that most organizations have and compare objectively how they compare to one another, what the risks are, the cost benefit, the pros and cons, all that good stuff. We're going to get into that here in just a moment. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Show me how to lie, you're getting better all the time, and turning all against one is an art that's hard to teach. Another clever words.
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
With 1,000 eyes and a good disguise, hit 'em right between the eyes, hit 'em right between the eyes, when you walk away.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 225. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, and the show is produced by Major Tom Productions. You can find contact information for both Third Stage and Major Tom Productions below, including my contact information if you'd like to chat with me about your project or even just informally brainstorm ideas as it relates to defining your digital strategy. Feel free to reach out to me. I've included my email address below. So this last clip we want to share with you is an overview of 4 different digital strategies you have to choose from. Most organizations are going to pursue one of these 4 strategies, sometimes more, or a combination of more than one. But at the very least, you want to understand what that combination might be, which path makes the most sense for you, and look objectively at the pros and cons and the risks of each of these paths. And no one is going to be perfect. And no matter which path you choose, you're making some trade-offs. You're mitigating some risk, but you're escalating risk in other areas. So we really want to have that objective conversation here about that. And that's why we've made this video. So let's roll the clip and we'll come back and chat about it. There's so many different options in the marketplace today that are just proliferating over time that it can be overwhelming to determine what path should we go down, what types of solutions should we be considering. And it's just important to decide which ones you don't want to consider and don't make sense for you as it is to define the ones that do. And so what I want to do today is talk about 4 major options you have when defining a new digital strategy. And those 4 major options are single ERP systems, best of breed technologies, custom development options, and defining a software platform for your organization. And they're not mutually exclusive. You might do a combination of more than one, but I want to share with you the pros and cons of each of those four major options here today. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. The first option you have as an organization, and this has historically been the most common option for organizations, is to select a single ERP system that's going to address the needs of your entire organization. Now, the main advantage of single ERP system is, first of all, it's integrated end-to-end processes. And what this means is you don't need to have different technologies to address different departments or different locations or different workflows within your organization. And that's one of the big reasons why organizations are so enamored by single ERP systems, is they think that one system can house all of their business processes and house all the technology they need for their enterprise technology needs. Somewhat related to that is another advantage, and that is you have one system, and that's a single source of truth. So not only are your processes and your technologies integrated, but now all the information that is housed within your organization is contained in this one system. So now you don't need to worry about going to multiple systems and getting different answers for the same question, or you don't need to go to multiple systems to get an answer or do an analysis that requires multiple data sets. Now, in theory, you should be able to go to one single ERP system that gives you the single source of truth that you need as it relates to your business operations. So these are two of the major advantages, but the disadvantages are just as important to understand as well. The first one is that ERP systems can be very expensive. And you might argue, well, ERP systems aren't any more expensive, or maybe they're even less expensive than some of the other three options we'll talk about. And that may or may not be true. More often than not, ERP systems are a lot more expensive than organizations think. And the reason for that is a couple-fold. One is ERP systems are end-to-end business processes. They're single systems that automate your entire business, and that means that's a lot of software. That's a big investment in not only the software itself, but more importantly, it's a big investment in changing all those processes, all those people, converting all that data that you might have had in place for decades or even longer. The other big expense that comes with ERP systems that is often under-realized and underrated is that the operational disruption caused by putting in a single ERP system is very disruptive. If you think about it, you're ripping out the guts of your organization and you're replacing it with another system. And that means you're putting the entire organization at risk, not just one subset of the organization, but the entire thing. So that expense is a real thing that you really need to make sure you understand. The other consideration is that ERP systems are risky. That's somewhat similar to the point I just made in terms of it being expensive. It's also risky because now you run the risk of having a material operational disruption at the time you're flipping the switch from your old technology or technologies to a single ERP system. And again, the reason for that is because now that you've integrated all of your business processes and your data and your workflows into one system, just one break or one problem in the implementation or in the workflows can have a domino effect and affect your entire operations. We see a lot of organizations that tried to implement ERP systems ineffectively, and they ran into so many problems that they couldn't ship product, they couldn't close the books, they couldn't run payroll. Major operational disruptions like that can be very expensive and very risky, and a lot of organizations simply can't or don't want to take that risk, understandably so. So it's important to understand that there are benefits to ERP systems, but there's also downside risks as well. And now we'll get into the other three options you have as well. Another option that organizations have is best-of-breed technologies. And best-of-breed is similar to ERP, but a little bit different. It's a lot like ERP in that you're addressing your end-to-end business processes, but it's different in that you're not necessarily doing it with one single system. So in other words, instead of having one ERP system that will handle order processing and forecasting and financials and accounting, manufacturing, warehouse management, payroll, etc., now you have different systems to address different needs. So you might have, instead of just one big system, you might have multiple systems that do different things that are all integrated together to provide that end-to-end solution that you might also get out of an ERP system. Now, when I first say that, it may sound like best of breed is not nearly as appealing as single ERP, but if you look at the pros and cons, it can actually be very appealing. The first reason why it's appealing to organizations is because it allows you to find the software that's the best fit for different parts of your organization. Many cases, organizations that are implementing a single ERP system find that this system can't address all or even most of their needs, and they end up with big gaps and big deficiencies in what the ERP system gives them, and they end up settling or compromising in certain parts of their business. So the fact that you're likely to get a better fit across different parts of your organization is something that's very appealing, and in many cases you find that these best-of-breed solutions can give you more value and a better fit with what you need in different parts of your organization. The other reason why best-of-breed is appealing to a lot of organizations is because it supports a more agile or more nimble approach to change within an organization. So we'll just call that agility for now. So that agility is something that's very appealing to organizations. And the reason it's more agile in many cases than a single ERP system is that you don't have to define all of your end-to-end processes and take on a big, massive undertaking with best-of-breed. You could pick off certain parts of your organization, certain processes, certain departments, certain functions, and find technologies that just address that part of the business. And oftentimes that's going to be lower cost and lower risk than taking on the entire big, massive, complex ERP implementation. And for a lot of organizations, that makes a lot of sense. It's easier to get, in many cases, alignment and support for a smaller investment that gives you incremental improvement than taking on a bigger, riskier ERP implementation. However, there's also risks with best-of-breed solutions as well. They're not as perfect as they may sound so far. The first is integration issues. When you have multiple systems, now you've got to figure out how you're going to tie those systems together so that your processes can flow end-to-end, so that your data can flow, so that you have one single source of truth for data and you're not worried about conflicting data in different systems. And that can be difficult and complex and risky and costly from an architecture and a technical perspective. Now, having said that, I'm going to come back to one point here with single ERP systems, and that is even with a single ERP system, you still have to do a certain amount of integration because you have different modules within an ERP system. And those different modules require integration to the other modules. The only difference here is you've got one single system and a single tool set for integrating those systems, which makes it a little bit easier and faster and cheaper than in this case. So this puts more pressure on the organization from a technical perspective. It might add to your cost line item here on integration, but it may also be that you have the advantages here that outweigh that cost. And the other downside risk of best-of-breed solutions is that it oftentimes results in a lack of clarity around the bigger picture direction of your technology landscape. So I refer to this as a short-sighted digital strategy. It's not always a bad thing, but it can be. And let me explain what I mean by that. Let's just say you decide that your sales force, your sales organization is the area you want to start with, and they're chomping at the bit for a new CRM system so they can track leads better, close more deals, generate more revenue and commission, etc. So you may decide, let's go buy and implement a new CRM system. Nothing wrong with that. It can deliver immediate value. It allows you to be more agile. Great stuff, right? But at the end of the day, the challenge with that is now you may be picking a CRM system that doesn't support longer-term needs from a technology perspective. Let's just say in the future, you also decide that you want to get a new manufacturing system or a new order management system, and that CRM system that you've deployed doesn't play nice with that other system. And if you haven't looked at the entire big picture in advance and planned that out, you might find yourself backed into a corner with a technology that works well for the sales team, but it's not there to support the longer-term digital strategy and roadmap of the organization. So one way around this, one way to mitigate that risk is to define your digital strategy up front, define what the best-of-breed tech stack is going to look like, and then start deploying it piece by piece as you see fit and as you prioritize. So having said all that, these are some of the pros and cons of best-of-breed. And now let's talk about custom development and platforms and how they compare to these two solutions as well. The third option we have to choose from is custom development or custom dev. And this term isn't nearly as cool as it used to be 20 or 30 years ago, but it's still something that's very relevant, something worth considering. And custom development essentially says we're not going to necessarily go buy anything off the shelf or out of the box. We're going to create our own technology. And it may sound crazy on the surface, but there is some advantage to this as well. Let me get to that here. First of all, probably most importantly, custom dev allows you to find the perfect fit. It's the only one of the 4 options where you are going to get exactly what you want if you do it right. These other options we talk about, the other 3, aren't going to give you what you want. You're inevitably going to end up with something that's a bit watered down and not quite what it is you want. And I hesitate to use the word perfect fit, but I think it is relevant here because in theory, you can do whatever you want with that technology. You can develop to do exactly what you want, how you want it, and it's something that can't be replicated by your customer. And that leads to a second benefit, which is it gives you a competitive advantage if you do it right. Now, in theory, these other 3 solutions can also give you a competitive advantage, but not to the same degree that a custom dev solution can. And not only is it giving you a competitive advantage, probably even more importantly, is it's harder to replicate. This makes it a lot harder for a competitor to knock off or rip off your competitive advantage or those things that make you unique and make you better than your competition. If you do find what you're looking for in these other solutions, your competitors can go get that same solution and build that same competency within their organization. So this is the only one of the 3 that gives you a true, sustainable competitive advantage that's very hard to replicate across your competitors. Now, with these advantages, just like the other 3 options, comes some distinct disadvantages as well. First and foremost, this is an expensive solution. They're all expensive solutions, but this is probably the most expensive because you're not getting the benefit of R&D and scale and economies of scale that some of these other solutions provide from all the R&D and innovation that's invested by the software vendors. Here, you're creating the wheel yourself, which may be okay. It may be that you're creating this high barrier to entry that's going to be hard for vendors and your competitors to replicate, and maybe that's okay. But you have to make sure if you do custom dev, it's something that's actually giving you a distinct competitive advantage. Otherwise, why not just go with an off-the-shelf solution? The other disadvantage here is that this option is very hard to maintain. It's probably the hardest to maintain of the 4 options we talk about here. What I mean by this is you don't have the benefit of a software vendor constantly investing in R&D and innovation improvements to the technology. Now it's on you to maintain that. Not only is that expensive, but it's difficult. It's something you have to stay on top of. Chances are you're going to have to invest in a larger, more robust internal IT department, which, again, may be worth it if these advantages play out the way you think they will. So custom dev is something that is worth considering. It's probably the least discussed of the 4 options that we're going to talk about here today, but it is something that's often overlooked and underrated in the digital strategy space. Now, the 4th option is software platforms. And software platforms a little different, similar to these 2, but a little bit different. A software platform is more than just an application. It's an actual platform that not only houses one or more applications, but it also gives you a framework to do what I might call semi-custom development. You have tools that you can use to build on a platform that's a common platform that's supported by a vendor, used by other customers and people throughout the community. So it takes away some of these downside risks of truly custom dev solutions and gives you somewhat of a best of all worlds solution here. That's probably the biggest advantage here, is that software platforms give you that best of all worlds. Now, before I move on, let me give you a couple examples of what a software platform is. If you've ever heard of Salesforce, you may think of that as a CRM software vendor, and it is. But a lot of people don't know that Salesforce also has a Force platform that Salesforce was built on, but they've opened it up to third-party developers to create other types of applications on that Salesforce platform. So if you go buy Salesforce, you don't only limit yourself to Salesforce, you also open yourself up to third parties that have created solutions built on that same platform. So it's almost like a best-of-breed sort of solution, but it's all on the same platform, and that can save you time and money and give you that integration and cost effectiveness that you may not get with some of these other options. Another example is Palantir, which is sort of a, I don't want to say middleware on steroids, but it's probably the best way to simplify it right now. You can actually find a review of Palantir right here. If you watch this video right here, I do a review of Palantir. But they're a solution that actually integrates multiple systems. So if you've got these old legacy systems that are well entrenched within your organization and hard to replace, You could put in a product like Palantir that gives you more advanced workflows and AI and reporting and things like that, and a better user interface, all on that platform that ties together your legacy systems. And then another example I'll share is a company called Rapid. And Rapid is spelled R-A-P-P-I-T, and it's actually founded by Jan Baan, who founded Baan Software back in the 90s, if you remember that. He and his team have created a platform that ties together multiple systems and provides integrated workflows, more of a composable ERP approach. So those are just a few examples. There's a lot more software platforms out there. Even some of the traditional ERP vendors are moving towards that platform model. NetSuite, for example, now is opening their platform to third parties to create different systems. Microsoft Dynamics has also opened up its platform to third-party developers. So platforms are a thing of the future, and a lot of organizations are moving that direction. Which leads me to another advantage in that software platforms, in many cases, can allow you to leverage the existing technology you already have. This can be a very appealing factor for big organizations, especially, and very mature, older organizations. If they have legacy systems that have been around for a long time, well entrenched in the organization, it's going to be highly risky, in some cases impossible, to rip those systems out and replace them. You may navigate that by putting a platform in place that ties together multiple systems that you already have. At the very least, it buys you time to have a better user interface and take advantage of AI and better reporting and analytics. Buys you more time to take advantage of that modern technology while you figure out how you might replace some of those back-end legacy systems. But platforms also come with downside risks. Platforms can be a bit harder to maintain because you're inherently now talking about having multiple systems, much like the best-of-breed option. It also requires you to have more of an internal IT staff that can support those multiple systems and stay on top of advancements and other possibilities within that platform. But again, if you find that the advantages are there, that disadvantage or that investment might be acceptable. And then much like the best-of-breed option, the software platform option makes it easier to get fragmented between your multiple systems that you're deploying. Just because you have multiple systems or applications on the same platform doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to integrate magically. You now have to figure out how you can address the fragmentation and pull together the multiple workflows and data sources. So now that we understand what the 4 different options are, let's talk about how to decide which one is best for you. So we've got 4 major buckets of options that we can pursue with our digital strategy. How do we know which one is best? Now, each one has strengths and weaknesses. There's no silver bullet. There's no perfect answer. So what you really have to do is look at different parts of your business and determine what the priorities are for different parts of your business. Not only that, you also have to look strategically as an organization, what are your long-term goals and objectives as an organization, and which one of these solutions are going to best support you. Now, one thing that's really important to point out is that you don't have to choose just one solution. You might find that you're going to lead with a single ERP approach, but you might augment it with a custom dev approach where you're going to take some of your areas of competitive advantage, very isolated. You're going to invest in some custom development to bolt onto your ERP system. Or you might find that you're going to find an ERP system, but you're going to find an ERP system that also enables a certain platform that opens things up to third-party developers. So this is where Microsoft Dynamics 365 becomes appealing. This is where NetSuite or Salesforce might become appealing. So you look at ERP systems that also have a platform, and that might be an option as well. What often happens with our clients too is that they say, we want to lead with a single ERP system, but we're going to use a best-of-breed approach to fill in some of the gaps, to fill in the blanks of what a single ERP system can't do. A lot of times clients think they're going to just pick one system, and then they quickly realize no one system is going to give them everything they need, so they end up with sort of a hybrid solution there. So there's a lot of ways to mix and match, but you really have to understand what your goals and objectives as an organization are in terms of how you're trying to scale the organization, how much you're trying to standardize operations, how much are you trying to outsource your IT department, how risk tolerant are you, what does your budget look like? All those factors and considerations need to be incorporated into the decision process here. So that's the overview of how to choose the 4 major digital strategies you have to choose from when you're defining your digital strategy for 2025 and beyond. Hopefully that helps you give you a good framework to get started on. And as is the case with everything we've talked about here today, whether it's looking at composable ERP or how to get started on your digital strategy, or comparing these different ERP systems or AI-enabled systems, or just generally defining your general digital strategy roadmap, I'm happy to chat with you about that. If you've got questions or you want to brainstorm ideas, feel free to reach out. I've included my contact information below. I've also included a links below and a QR code right here that you can scan if you'd like to download or read our free 2025 digital transformation report. It's a report that contains a number of independent reviews and software rankings. It contains best practices for implementation, lessons learned, benchmarks, all kinds of things. It's really packed with information that's really important if you're defining a digital strategy and roadmap for your organization. So I highly encourage you to download that, scan the QR code here on the screen, or go to the links below if you're listening to the audio only version of this podcast. So I hope you found today's episode helpful. Again, if you'd like to learn more, I've included a bunch of resources below. Be sure to check it out. We do new episodes every Wednesday. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, next week, same time, same place. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll see you soon. Take care.